Ladies and gentlemen, our referee has called a stop to this contest, declaring the winner by knockout and new MMA show! Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome.
Oh, man. I wish you all could have heard the throat clear that Mike just did before this show began.
I was laughing at him because he sounded like the owl from the Tootsie Roll
Dude,
commercial.
that's exactly what I thought he sounded like. A 3.
A 2, a 1.
3. Do we leave this in the show or what?
Oh, 100% this is staying.
Leave it in.
This is staying.
Welcome to another exciting and hilarious round of and new MMA show. I am your awful host, Michael Hansen, and I'm a ring announcer sometimes. And I'm joined, as I always am, by my two co-hosts. Both of them bring MMA punditry to smart places. Introducing first, he's residing in New York. He's the man in the throwback pride hat, Mark Priaulx. Mark, sometimes people ask this question, and they don't really mean it. I mean it. How are you?
I'm good, Mike. Thank you for asking. Yeah, what's going on? We're back with a normal scheduled episode in terms of recaps from last week, previews of a big pay-per-view, the first one of the year coming up, so pumped for that. Did have to bust out the pride hat to talk about my man Shogun sailing off into the sunset here, one of the last pride veterans remaining in the active fight game, but not the last. And yeah, well, I'm pumped to get into this thing. We got a lot of good stuff to talk about.
Yeah, man. All right, introducing from Florida, the Sunshine State. He is Nicaragua Nightmare. Umar Artola, what's up, man?
What's going on? Had a very full day today. Took the wife to Disney, drove my ass from Disney directly to the gym to catch a couple classes, drove my ass home to cook for me and her, and here we are.
Folks, just
Happy
so you know,
to be
when we hopped on this recording, Omar goes, "Dude, I'm tired." And we're like, "Why?"
Fucking exhausted.
Little precursor here. Mark and I are both fathers. Omar goes, "Man, I got up early," and I'm like, "Oh yeah?" He goes, "Yeah, we went to Disney."
All I heard from that was my pullout game is strong, and I went to Disney. That's what I heard.
Nice. Oh boy. Man. Well, like Mark was alluding to, we have a normal scheduled episode. We have fights to recap. We have fights to preview and everything in between. Let me run this real quick. We're going to recap some fights from this past weekend's UFC Fight Night, Strickland versus Imavov. We're going to get an update from our very own rankings system, Mark's very own rankings system, the Priaulx Rankings. We're going to find out what's new in the MMA world with our segment Inside the MMA Sphere with Omar. And then we are going to look ahead to this weekend's awesome pay-per-view card, UFC 283, Teixeira versus Hill. And then we're going to end with a little bit of trivia. Before we get into any fight talk, gentlemen, let us first thank our audience. Folks, if you're watching this right now on YouTube, thank you so much. If you will do us the great service and throw us a subscription, subscribe on YouTube, hit the red buttons. There's a bell that'll notify you every time we put out new content. Drop us a comment below if you like any of our takes. Drop us a comment below if you disagree with any of our takes. Keep it civil. Keep it clean. Oh, that's a good. I should go further with that someday. Touch gloves and let's make it official. I don't know. I'll work on it. Hey, if you want audio only, we got you. You can find us wherever you get those podcasts. And, of course, find us on social media. You can find us at @andnew_MMA show in all the places. Okay. Boys, this week, the name on the marquee is not attached to any particular fight. Because this week, the name of the marquee is Francis Ngannou. And the headline that Francis Ngannou and the UFC have indeed parted ways. Mark, let me start with you this time. What is your reaction to the news of Ngannou and the UFC saying it's been fun, thanks, and we're gonna cruise in opposite directions?
Yeah, what a headline it is. It is not every day that your heavyweight champion walks away from the promotion, especially when you are willing to make him the highest paid heavyweight ever, more than Brock Lesnar, according to what Dana has told us, which I'm inclined to believe. Not a great headline for the UFC, which adds to what has been a rough 2023 thus far. I know Dana has already begun, he's in full spin mode, trying to spin it. He's going to continue to try to make you think that Francis Ngannou is not the best heavyweight in the world, even though he certainly is at this point in time. He is going to try to make you think that he's scared to fight other people, even though he fought Cyril Gane on one leg.
And won.
And fought the guy people call the GOAT heavyweight twice, in Stipe Miocic, and whoever the fuck else you want to add into this list of names that he has fought. Said in these negotiations that he was willing to fight Bones and whoever else it would have been. And I guess we'll get into all this as we kind of throw it back and forth here. But yeah, it is an interesting choice by Ngannou. Obviously, he had a lot of asks. He has a lot of beliefs in the power that he believes the fighters should have. The UFC, especially now, I think it's safe to say we are not going to see them caving on these kind of things anytime soon. If they could not cave to their heavyweight champion, I don't think they're going to be caving in general on things like sponsorships and whatever else could be on the table. And Francis stuck to his guns and said, you know what, if you're not going to get me what I've been kind of fighting for here, then I'm going to walk. And we'll see as time goes on if that was the right decision or not. It could certainly go either way in that scenario, which I guess we can get into as we sort of run through this here. But it's going to be interesting to see where he goes next, that's for sure.
Omar, when the news broke, what were your reactions to Francis, who is the current rightful UFC heavyweight champion, just vacating his title? I saw some headlines saying that he was stripped, and then I saw sort of reactive headlines saying it is incorrect to say that he was stripped. He vacated the belt because he said thanks but no thanks to this next contract.
Yeah, like Mark said, they're in full pinwheel mode, and they have been fucking turning since all of this went down. And let's keep in mind, from what I understood from what Francis was talking about with his interview with Ariel, his contract expired in the middle of December. He's known about this for quite some time. They were still in talks, however, so he kind of was still trying to have, somewhat professionalism as far as how that was handled. Didn't go online and was like, fuck the UFC, I'm out, peace out. He was still trying to figure some things out. Once they got to this point, T-Mobile is really whoever leaked that T-Mobile thing is basically the new Ariel Helwani.
Yes,
because
yes.
That whoever screwed that up I guarantee you, is probably not only fired but somewhat blackballed in that industry because they screwed up. So they originally the whole reason why this even happened, why we even really found out about this, is because somebody who works at T-Mobile Arena, I'm assuming, we actually don't know the details.
Yes, the arena. I thought you meant
Got to be multiple somebodies who started. It's not just like one guy threw that up on a building. This was a group of somebodies.
Well, somebody flipped the fucking switch that made it go outside. Right, so whoever that dickhead was is gone. Yeah. Whatever intern or whatever that was, outski. Done.
So just to clarify for people who may not know, they put a promotional poster for Bones versus Gane up on the T-Mobile Arena. And it said on it, for the vacant World Heavyweight Championship. And everyone saw it and said, wait a minute, what could this mean? What do you mean vacant? Did something happen with Francis? And then the UFC released everything all at once, that Francis was gone and that Bones was back and he was fighting Gane now, and so on and so on. Yes, but obviously not the way they wanted to break that news.
One of the few times that as a collective we all did math properly in seeing all that news and deducing all that.
Yeah, right. Yes.
So we did find out Dana White came out in a one of the, I think it was before the Strickland fight actually happened, at one of the little pressers that they have.
Yeah.
And they kind of discussed it, and he was like, yeah, they screwed up, but this is happening. This is legit. Francis has been released, is what he said. And said a lot of, like, to be honest, Ariel's podcast, his interview, or first his podcast breaking down breaking down the new breakdown where he has receipts and he goes through these interviews minute by minute and just shits on everything that they say is quite fantastic. We don't have the time to do those types of breakdowns because it's literally like an hour and a half, but I recommend it for full details. But Dana White tried to spin a lot of shit and used a lot of language that was very purposeful to try to get you to believe that somehow Francis is the dick in all this. Francis sounds like he asked for a lot of things. He was also very clear about the fact that he didn't expect to get all of those things, but you work your way at the top and then you kind of chisel your way back down when it comes to negotiations, right? You don't start with the number that you generally will accept. You start at the number that, something high, and then you work your way down. So there were a lot of things. I think he talked about health insurance, even though he doesn't need health insurance. Like, he's good now. But he talks about the guys at the bottom and what about them? He was talking about being able to be free. And I think the freedom thing was the one that really stuck and continued to resonate throughout the interview. And the reality is the UFC has used a lot of legal jujitsu to ensure these guys are marked as independent contractors and not employees, but they treat them and are basically stuck in this company as employees, because as independent contractors, they are still, while under contract with the UFC, not allowed to basically do jack shit without the UFC giving their say-so. Most of the time, in this case, it's a jiu-jitsu match here or some kind of grappling match there. But, for example, if Ngannou wanted to go fight Tyson Fury, or if GSP wanted to fight Oscar De La Hoya, as that was a thing at some point, it's not going to happen. They tried to get gangster with Ngannou. They were like, Ngannou right now trains out of Couture, Extreme Couture. Apparently they got gangster with him and was like, this isn't how this works. You can go ask Couture how that worked out for him. And he went and asked Couture. He said, how did this work out for you? And Couture was like, didn't happen great. This is what it was. And I think Francis has just gotten to a point where, it is more, it seemed like it was more than the money. Because at the end of the day, the UFC was only offering money. There were no other concessions that were even on the table for them, it sounds like. Which is probably why the Brock Lesnar thing is true. I think they probably tried to give him and throw all the money they possibly could at him. But Francis Ngannou was looking for more than just money. And the freedom to do what he wanted, whether it was to box, whether it was to move on, whether it was to whatever, is what he wanted, I think, above all else. And the UFC was never going to do that. I don't think they were ever, under Dana White's rule, I don't think that's a precedent they're ever going to set. So it was an interesting listen, to hear Francis do something like that. Dana White's spin about him wanting to leave and fight lesser opponents had me do a double take, because I was like, I'm pretty sure the whole plan is to go fight Tyson Fury. So is that a dig at Tyson Fury? Because that's crazy. That's wild.
He was talking about the PFL when he made that comment.
Yeah.
Sure. He's a wild man. There is a point to be made that the heavyweight divisions across the board in other organizations are not the strongest. Bellator arguably might have the best heavyweight division right now.
And it pales in terms of UFC's.
Right. I mean, it is kind of the leftovers of the other organizations at this point that are making up the heavyweight division of Bellator, and kind of new guys that we really don't know in ONE and in PFL, who haven't really made the splash to the mainstream.
Yeah.
But I mean, if this guy's making 35, 40 million for a Tyson Fury fight, I mean,
yeah. I think this was very much about Fury. I think he has had a lot of talks. Obviously, we've seen him in the ring with Fury after Fury's last win, or was that 2 wins ago, whenever he was in the ring with him. Whether it's going to be a boxing match or some type of mixed rules agreement or whatever, I think there's a lot of wheels in motion. I think the UFC was saying this is not something that can happen. And whether it's the right decision or the wrong decision long term, we don't know. But I respect if Francis just felt like, you know what? As a man, I want to fight Tyson Fury, and I don't like being told that I can't do that. And, you work for an employer, that's the way it is sometimes. So if that's what he had to do to get out and feel like he was able to control his own destiny, then good on him. He's a guy who's very comfortable in his own skin. He knows exactly who he is. He's never really worried about what is being said about him, what people think about him. Obviously, the guy has been through a ton in his life, if you know his backstory. to get to where he is right now. And I think he's just a guy who is comfortable being like, you know what? He doesn't even have a manager right now, which we can also touch on. He did all this kind of by himself with some advice here and there. But I think he was kind of like, you know what? Even if this is the wrong choice in the end, I will be happy to be able to control my own destiny right now and do what I want to do. And if that's what this boils down to, then you can't hate on it.
I'll tell you this. Whatever time Ngannou has spent not fighting, he's been learning English because his interview skills are fucking A+, my man. I don't ever think he was ever this clear or articulate in the past. And I'm glad he's gotten there now because with a situation like this, to be able to defend yourself without any kind of interpreter or without any kind of confusion, to like really be able to articulate your point for something like this, something that is quite unprecedented if we really think about it, right? Like there have been other guys who have left in the past, but it hasn't been, I feel like this, maybe Randy Couture is the last one that I remember being this contentious. But, you know, this is definitely not the first time we've had Dana White try to spin a lot of garbage when it comes to this kind of stuff.
There's been plenty of guys who are scared to fight.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking about more the you know, if you don't want to be here, you don't have to be here. That's probably true for the guy who's 1-0 in the UFC, you know what I mean, who may talk a little bit of shit or something like that. Like, you don't want to be here, sure, you can leave. When it comes to people who have a name, like ask Rockhold, if he wanted to leave, could he leave? Because I doubt it. GSP couldn't leave when he was already retired and he wanted to fight Oscar De La Hoya. They said no. Yep. That's not true. It's a load of bullshit. You know what I mean? Ngannou's contract had a timer on it. The timer elapsed. The stuff that Ngannou wants, that possibly the boxing contracts will be able to provide to him to some extent, the UFC's not going to match. So this whole idea of, yeah, we were, you know, we you know, you don't want to be here, you don't have to be here, we're not going to try to match it or anything, you know, you're good, you know, if you don't want to be here, go away. They didn't have the option. They weren't going to match whatever the contract was. So it's almost like when you're already on your way to your room and your mom goes, yeah, that's right, you go to your room. I'm going. It's already happening.
I was under the impression they waived the option to match. That they did.
No, they did have it. But the reason why they waived it is because they knew what Ngannou was going to get offered. They were never going to match it.
I got you.
Well,
yeah, but the way they're making it sound is that they did it because it's out of the niceness, or you know, out of this like morality of, you know, of course we don't keep fighters here. We don't hold people hostage when there's literal people hostage right now in their contracts in the UFC.
Mike, let's get you in here.
Yeah, it makes me think of a few things of just, well, first it makes me think of somebody like a Corey Anderson, because at first I'm like, really, he's the heavyweight champ of the UFC, but he just wants to walk away, and you know, Dana put out there that he would have been the highest paid heavyweight ever. But then I think of Corey Anderson, of like how Corey Anderson, you know, up to the point of like sharing his actual numbers, he has been very candid and open about saying this is the most money he's ever been paid by Bellator. And on the other side, I think about somebody like Conor, who, you know, Conor could have at some point gone through this whole stink and been like, I'm only getting paid a couple $1 million to fight Nate Diaz, where I could go make $40 million fighting a boxer. And he could have done this, although the UFC kind of made an exception for him now, didn't they?
Oh, they did. But Conor has always been an exception. Conor is a walking exception.
But just the whole idea, I remember Dana saying this just recently with some of the Paddy Pimblett controversy of saying about fighter pay, about saying as just being on the UFC roster gives you so much more notoriety and just what's the word I'm trying to say, like public
for sure
perception that you will have other money making opportunities out there, and then like linking it back to Conor, like Conor made a few million for his fights each, you know, at the high levels, but then he starts his whiskey company and he sold that for like however many tens of millions of dollars. So you look at a guy like, you know, you go back to, you know, the Corey Andersons, who's like, I'm getting paid so much more to fight at Bellator, and then you look at a guy like Ngannou and you're like, could Ngannou have so many more business opportunities had he stayed as the UFC heavyweight champion for some years? I don't know. And then also raises the question. This will be my last thing. It does raise the question of why is the UFC so apparently so stingy? They're the fucking UFC, and how are companies like the PFL and Bellator outbidding them? If Bellator and PFL are coming up with these hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. I saw a meme comparing the fighter pay between Chad Mendez's first fight at bare knuckle being comparable to that of Francis's title defense.
Yeah.
How could that be? I don't know.
I mean, they had Francis still locked on a good contract from earlier, I believe. So I don't know what this contract would have been. For all we know, it would have been very good, and it could have been as much as he'd be making in Bellator or PFL or wherever else he would go. I really don't think this was about money. I think it's about Fury. But on top of it, boxing pays a shit ton. And yeah, it's only one fight, which kind of, and you've kind of segued me into the next point I wanted to make here, which is that, yes, he can now be free. He can go do whatever he wants to do with Tyson Fury. He can get paid out the ass for whatever that's going to be. He is going to lose unless it's really some major, like kicking is allowed or takedowns are allowed. But I can't imagine that's ever happening. So whatever it is, he's going to lose. And then what happens? So that's my one concern here. And again, if all he's thinking about is I want to be in charge of my own life and I don't like being told I can't fight Tyson Fury, which is obviously, it's going to be the biggest thing he's ever done in his life is fight Tyson Fury. Then good on him. Sure. And take it from there. But I do worry about what happens after he loses to Tyson Fury because now people have seen him lose a fight, which always hurts a little bit, even if it's a fight where, take Conor. They knew he was going to lose. It's still, when you see him lose, he loses a little bit of his aura, and that will happen to Ngannou. Does the UFC say hey, you did your thing, now welcome back? I don't think that's happening. So what does he then do? Because as you said, he can go make money. The PFL will give him money. The Bellator will give him money. He doesn't matter in these places an iota of how much he matters in the UFC. And he had plenty of career left. I'm not saying he's, he doesn't have a decade left. He's not some super young guy, but he had plenty of fights left. It's not like he had one or two more and he was out of here. He's got fights left in the tank. So he possibly, again, we don't know how this is going to go, but he possibly has said, I'm going to kind of give away the late end of my career as a star here for this Fury fight. And then I don't really know what I have after that. Again, he'll get paid, but it's just not going to be with a spotlight on him that is the kind of spotlight he deserves as the best heavyweight on the planet.
I would put it in terms of this though, right? Let's say he does make what did they make in that last heavyweight fight, the Fury Wilder fight? I mean, they were making at least a few tens of millions of dollars, right?
I could look it up.
Because if it's anything that's comparable to that, even on the B side of things, right? Tyson Fury is definitely going to be the A side there. There's no doubt to that. What was it? 30-20?
30 and 20 million.
So let's say it's 20 million, right? They were talking about Ngannou getting Brock Lesnar's 200. Ariel said Brock Lesnar's 200 appearance was 8 million. And I believe Ngannou said the new contract would have been something like that for John Jones. So let's say it's maybe 8, 9, 10 million. He could make double that in one fight. You know what I mean? He doesn't have to fight twice. He doesn't have to worry about his knee in that case.
Yep.
I agree. I'm not talking about the money, though.
Yep.
I'm talking about who Francis Ngannou is going forward once that Tyson Fury fight is over. He instead of being the heavyweight champion of the world in the UFC, or at least in the mix and other huge fights, he kind of becomes a guy on an island doing I don't know what.
Yeah.
Well, Godspeed, Francis, and whatever you do. Man, Fury's going to make him look bad.
Yeah. Yeah. And who knows, maybe some stud starts coming up through the ranks in PFL or Bellator and Ngannou ends up there and a big fight happens. You never know how this shit plays, or one, or who knows what. You never know how this shit plays out. Maybe there is some avenue where he still is in a big fight, but hard to see that at this moment.
Other than a boxing exhibition, I can see him sort of being a sort of journeyman for the rest of his career, but like a very high level one.
Yeah,
Maybe,
I agree.
Like I could see him fighting under almost every other banner. Like maybe he fights
Oh my god.
Fedor. Or maybe he fights Bader. Maybe, and then he goes to PFL and he fights fucking Kayla Harrison into like a fucking crazy. I don't know.
And then he fights some mixed rules fight against like
In
an older
one.
boxer, like random. Yeah, I could.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I don't want his career to be, because we're not there yet. He's not at the end.
Yeah, I really want him
So
to
there's-
fucking fight John Jones.
There's two points there that were fantastic. The first one is that Ngannou Fedor fight sounds like it could happen at this point now. Totally possible.
That's just,
Let's go.
Yeah, that's
Let's
literally just
fucking go.
Fedor's
right
fighting
there.
his last fight right now, dude. He's over.
He could come back.
the
He
end.
can come back.
Especially if he loses to Bader. That's certainly the end.
Ngannou is the biggest test of his career. He's got to come back.
Oh, God.
I forgot what the second one was. That one was too good.
Mark,
So there it is.
Fedor's like one of your guys, right?
I love Fedor.
Is he
yeah.
on your like? He's on your like Mount Rushmore.
That's his last emperor right there.
In terms of my favorite fighters ever, or in terms
yeah.
of who I think are the best fighters ever?
Oh, I don't know. You tell me.
I wouldn't say. I mean, I love Fedor, but I wouldn't say if I had to rattle off like my 3-4 favorite fighters ever, he wouldn't be on that list.
Oh, okay.
But if I was naming my 3-4 goats ever,
Sure.
I think he would be on the list.
He's way up there. Okay. In the interest of time, let us move on. This past weekend, there was a UFC event. UFC Fight Night, Strickland versus Imavov. Bear in mind, Strickland was a late replacement as Kelvin Gastelum's face took quite a bit of damage in practice. And Sean Strickland, who who fought mere weeks ago in a losing effort against Jared Cannonier, he stepped up and stepped in against the rising Nassourdine Imavov. And Sean Strickland got it done this time, defeating Imavov by unanimous decision. The scorecards reading 49-46, 49-46, and 48-47. Omar, let me start with you this time. What was your reaction to Mr. Strickland getting in the win column this time in another 5-round decision?
You know, it was a good performance, but I have to keep in mind that I've fallen asleep twice trying to watch this fight.
I hope Sean
I
Strickland does not
don't know
see
what
this.
it is, man. I don't know if it's, he looked more aggressive in this fight than he did in his last fight, but there's something
Yeah.
about him not really going for, or seemingly, because I don't want to assume he's not, and maybe he is and he's just not great at it, but seemingly not going for a finish. He gets these guys in these situations where they're kind of royally screwed. In this situation, I thought it was interesting that round 5 went to Imavov. I thought Imavov was able to come back in round 5 and at least kind of empty the gas tank there. I didn't think he had anything left, to be honest. I saw him kind of gassing kind of in the middle of that fight. But Strickland, I think, was the one who ended up taking his foot off the pedal in that last round, which I thought was a little uncharacteristic from him, if I'm not remembering things properly. So kind of some weird occurrences in that fight, but I think Sean Strickland did fight the fight correctly. I thought he kept a heavy pace, made Imavov very uncomfortable, kept him on his back foot almost the entire time. And Sean Strickland did what Sean Strickland does and just kind of outworked him. Yeah. I just think once we got to the 5th round, either Sean Strickland knew he was good, banked on the fact that he was good, which is a dangerous thing to do considering how some of his recent decisions have gone. But 5th round just wasn't his to win, but he had already had, in my opinion, 4 in the books.
Mark, what about you?
Yeah, this went more or less how I imagined it would go. Maybe not exactly which rounds were which, as Omar said, which I'll touch on too. But you got to appreciate what Sean Strickland brings into a cage. Like, the man just wades into close range again and again. He has his head straight up, and he just kind of bar fights you. Like, I know there's a lot more that goes into his game than that, of course, but like the appearance of the way that he fights, it isn't a pretty game. And he's just so good with his head movements and at understanding how he has to move to be just on the outside of punches and at blocking with his hands and with his arms that he can kind of stay there standing straight up, looking kind of, less polished than a lot of these other fighters we see look. And it's because he's more polished, like in the subtleties almost of the fight. And they say he spars every day, so I'm sure that's part of it, and that's kind of why his game looks the way he does. But he's really interesting to watch. And then he's so good at angling shots in ways that are awkward enough to get through. And there are a lot of guys with prettier technique that can't hang in the environment that Sean Strickland brings. And Nassourdine Imavov was one of them. He, like Omar said, he was on the back foot the whole fight. He couldn't adjust. He let it be Sean's style of fight. And he just couldn't hang. There was the second round you could argue maybe went his way. And then the fifth, I believe, did. But 1, 3, 4 were certainly Sean, and I kind of feel like 2 was Sean as well. It was funny because the cardio did end up being a factor. Like, Strickland was certainly not fresh, but he was able to push through. And then, I do think he got a little tired finally in the fifth, whereas on the flip, I think Imavov was too concerned with his own cardio in the pace that he was being forced to fight, that he was trying so hard to make sure he made it the whole way. And then finally in the fifth, he was like, all right, I can let it go. And he actually fought the way he should have been fighting the whole fight long. And maybe he had more in the tank than he realized he did, because that was the best version of Imavov we saw in that fight was fifth round Imavov. But it was obviously too late at that point, and he couldn't find a way to get going against Strickland's game prior to that. So it was a really good short notice win for Strickland. Great way to bounce back right after a tough loss, and he's basically right back in the mix.
Back in it. Yep.
Yeah, I've said this before, and I'll say it again, and I'll say it probably many more times. There are guys who are game planners, and there are guys who are, this is the way that I fight, and you can try to adjust to me. Sean Strickland is the latter. Sean Strickland, I'm interested. Omar, you said that you felt like he was more aggressive in this fight. Watching it, I'm like, he's fighting like Sean Strickland. He fights the same in every fight.
Yeah, his last fight,
Yes.
though, the one before this,
Yes.
the Jared Cannonier fight. Simple example: Sean Strickland threw kicks in this fight. Just even a slight change in that regard. I thought he was just a bit more aggressive, a bit more versatile. I thought he fought as much as he's still Sean Strickland. You can't change Sean Strickland, but he did more Sean Strickland in this fight, I think, than he did in his last fight. I feel like he was a bit more normal in this one than we saw in the Jared Cannonier fight.
Yeah,
Agree. I think he was a little dialed back against Cannonier for whatever reason, and he looked more like we are used to him looking here.
Yeah. I will say the thing that's very interesting about Strickland's striking is his striking is almost meant to disrupt and not necessarily injure or hurt or stop in terms of power. And I think that's why you saw Imavov so uncomfortable for so long, because anytime he's trying to get any rhythm, here's something from Strickland. Something's popping him in the face and messing up his rhythm. And he's continuously trying to reset, find that rhythm, find that area that feels comfortable so he can throw some sort of combination or throw something back. But he's so good at just continuously keeping that pace and that disruptive rhythm that it's something that screws a lot of people up. On the flip side, the man has so many holes in his defense that somebody at some point, I feel like, has to see it and has to take advantage of it.
I mean,
he's got a Vic chin.
Yes, did.
Well, yes, he's got a Michael Vick chin or a James
Vick.
maybe Michael Vick too. Who knows? But a James Vick chin.
Way better at his way of leaning than Vic ever was.
Yes, he's got a nice Philly shell kind of thing, but he relies on that lean so hard that honestly, one nice step in from somebody skilled is going to lay him the fuck out. Period.
Yeah, and we've seen it. Yeah.
So
Yeah, to your point, he throws so many shots that have no chance, no matter how clean they connect, of remotely stumbling you. But there's still shots where you're just like, fuck, I don't want to keep getting hit in my face, and you can't adjust to the weirdness that he's just kind of peppering you with.
Yeah.
And damage does accumulate. You're not going to get knocked out, but the shit hurts, and it doesn't not hurt any less throughout the fight. It just gets worse.
I'm not saying none of his shots. Obviously, he throws some shots that have the power, but he throws these kind of shots sometimes, and just weird. He just keeps his fists in your face.
Yeah, he's always trying to touch you, always trying to make contact with your body, give your body something else to react to mess up whatever it is you want to feel out. Yeah. He's a very annoying fighter when it comes to that.
But the skill that he brings is this, because there are fighters that are pressure fighters, and there are fighters that are quite conservative and safe. He somehow is both at the same time. He is an aggressive fighter who, like Mark alluded to, he wades forward. He's constantly the one who's trying to put you on the back foot. He's constantly coming at you, and he's a pressure fighter. But at the same time, he's also like very safe and very conservative at the same time. He doesn't expose himself. He doesn't put himself in compromising positions for the most part. He fights and sort of he comes at you with the Philly shell somehow at the same time. Yeah. It's a very interesting and tricky formula for a lot of guys to try to figure out.
That's what I was kind of alluding to earlier. He's hard to hit in a way that doesn't make sense based on the style that he fights.
Totally.
One example of somebody who fights an aggressive pressure style would have been somebody like a Cain Velasquez or a Daniel Cormier. Yeah. And while you could see that kind of pressure being similar, the way they get it done, I think, is very obvious, is night and day different, right? You're not going to see Daniel Cormier pitter-pattering like that all day. You know, he might throw a couple, jabs in your face and kind of get to the pawing, but Daniel Cormier is trying to lay somebody out, and so is Cain Velasquez.
Yep.
And also they're trying to get inside and get a hold of you, whereas Sean is kind of just trying to live there without necessarily getting a hold of you.
And we've seen Sean Strickland use his ground game a lot more in the past. He's gotten away from it, I think.
He teased it a couple times in this fight, but it was more just like to dictate where they were going to be, kind of.
Yeah. Yeah, he's got a good ground game, though. He should probably use it more.
Yeah, he does. I agree.
Okay, Sean Strickland back in the win column. Mark, where does he go from here? Put on your matchmaker hat, and what would you do with Strickland next?
So I kind of think he could find himself in a big fight. And the reason I say that is because so much of middleweight is booked. If we're still assuming that we're going to be looking at a Pereira versus Izzy title fight, you got that. Vettori and Delice is booked. Brunson and Duplessis is booked. Andre Muniz is booked. It kind of leaves me thinking that one of two things happen. One being Robert Whittaker needs a fight since Paulo Costa did not work out. And it feels a little wild to give Sean Strickland that fight considering he just lost his last one. But it was a very contentious loss, and it was to Jared Cannonier, who we've already seen Robert Whittaker beat. So it would not shock me if Sean Strickland kind of stumbles into being given a Robert Whittaker fight. On the other side of that is the man who just pulled out of that Robert Whittaker fight because of his contractual situation and whatever is Paulo Costa. And the Whittaker fight is such a big fight that I get he was like, no, like I don't want to do this. My contract needs to be right. Whereas Strickland, I could see him being like, you know what? This is an easier fight, and I want to get out of my contract, so I will take this one, and I will beat him, and I will get out of here. Like, I could see that being the Costa thought process. So I could see Strickland kind of ending up in either of those very high-profile fights all of a sudden.
Omar, you got any other names for me?
Yeah, I have this feeling that if Izzy doesn't take a fight with Pereira at a time that they want him to take a fight, because now things have gotten a little weird with a lot of these fights falling off of the map, I don't see it being unreasonable for Robert Whittaker to step in against Alex Pereira before Izzy gets a rematch. If that were to happen, I wouldn't mind seeing Marvin Vettori versus Sean Strickland.
Okay.
Or, in that case, Izzy versus Sean Strickland, because they already have a history of talking.
That's what I
shit
thought
to
you were
each
going to
other.
say.
I mean, yes.
Wow.
Marvin Vettori, I think, just because I think that's, I don't want to call Vettori a gatekeeper, but I do think for the top five, it might, in a division this stacked, I think it's kind of warranted.
Yeah. Well, remember, he's fighting your boy Delice.
Oh, is he? Did I mention it? I can't.
Dude, you're the fight announcer.
That's all I did, though. I announce it and it goes out. So if that is the case, then I think a fight with Izzy would be great, especially considering the backstory, right? The shit talking they've been talking before.
Sure.
Strickland's probably going to spend the next 2 months, if that happens, talking about how quote unquote queer Izzy is and he fucks cartoons and all this other nonsense. And then Izzy's going to spend his time talking shit Strickland. And then they're going to throw down and they're going to see. And I think it's going to be fantastic. So I'd be here for it.
Dude, I think Vittori's a phenomenal matchup for Sean Strickland.
Oh, I agree.
I've been wanting to see that fight. Yeah, I agree.
I wonder if Vettori would fold to that pressure. Because in my head, I don't think he would. But Strickland has done some crazy shit.
Okay, moving along. taking a look at the loser here, Nassourdine Imavov. Omar, staying with you here at middleweight. If you were the matchmaker, what would you do next with Imavov?
Fucking give him Kelvin Gastelum when Kelvin Gastelum's tooth is healed.
Yeah.
Just give him. He didn't do nothing. He's not going anywhere. Just give him Kelvin Gastelum and let's get back on track here.
I was going to say the exact same. I think you can easily still make that fight. I still think it works, makes sense, the whole deal. If we can't get that fight for any reason, I also could see Chris Curtis being a fun option.
Oh, that would be fun. Teammate of Sean Strickland.
Yeah, that's another one that fights kind of the same way. That shit, man, Imavov is not going to get any breaks here.
Yeah, I'm a fan. Kelvin is one of these guys on the roster who I don't trust to make it to the cage.
Who does?
Nobody, man. And he's so talented. Okay. Let's move on to the co-main event of this UFC fight night this past weekend in the featherweight division. Danny Ige defeated Damon Jackson by knockout at the 4-minute, 13-second mark of round number 2. Mark, let me start with you. What was your impressions of the first round and then the moments that led up to the knockout for Danny Ige?
Yeah, so we saw Damon Jackson come out aggressive, which I guess, he was feeling strong, I'm sure, after his early finish of Pat Sabatini in the last one. And then in the first, I don't remember what it was, maybe 30, 40 seconds or so, he got clipped with a good one, and you could see that his game plan went out the window. Yeah. He felt the power, and he was like, well, I'm fucking circling on the cage now because I'm not doing that again. Yeah. And it threw off his whole offense. Like, it was almost like he didn't know how to handle it after he got hit one time. And he never really made the adjustment because he let Ige control the middle. Ige was able to have all that space behind him to move and avoid Damon Jackson ever being able to close that distance to get a hold of him. Granted, Jackson wasn't trying terribly hard to grapple, which made no sense to me. I thought he was going to be much more determined is not the word I want to say, but to push that grappling and even dive for legs if he had to and so on. Yeah, and then the eye poke happened, and I feel like Damon Jackson kind of even got more tentative, and it was just downhill from there because he kind of just stayed on the outside, striking, and that was never going to work. So I'm not sure what the thinking was on his part, but he paid for it bad. Danny Ige caught a body. Beautiful left hook, an awesome visual as he dropped Jackson, looked down at him, and then just stared at the camera and walked off. That was a classic one, and Danny Ige is back in the win column with a statement knockout.
Omar, what's your take?
That was definitely a y'all must have forgot performance because he styled on Damon Jackson. I mean, the work that he did on the feet was magic. It's very difficult once you get to the top of the heap to be able to move and successfully, continuously rack up points against somebody and tee off on them the way that he was popping Damon Jackson. And like Mark said, once he caught him clean, Damon Jackson didn't want no part of that shit. And I thought it was really interesting because we've never really seen him shy away from a fight. It's not the first time he's gotten hit in the cage. It definitely won't be the last. But, we've seen him bite down in his mouthpiece. We've seen him charge into people. We've seen him, chaotically grab for takedowns and kind of work his way from there. And whatever Dan Ige hit him with, he fucking did not like it. And he responded very differently to how he normally responds to getting hit. And it was the opposite reaction of what he should have done.
Yep.
But Dan Ige styled on him, man. It was a beautiful performance from Dan Ige. Beautiful striking from Dan Ige. The timing, the footwork.
Yeah, he's talented.
So beautiful.
He's talented.
He's so good, man. And I'll be honest, I really counted on Damon Jackson's aggression to take this fight home.
Yeah.
And as soon as Dan Ige's crack left him without that aggression, it was Dan Ige's time for the rest of that fight. It was great, man. It was great to watch.
Dogged is the word I was looking for.
I was gonna throw it out there.
I thought Damon Jackson would be significantly more dogged chasing the takedown, or at least trying to attach himself to Ige, and he really wasn't. And if he's not doing that, there's no way for him to win that fight.
Doggedly.
Yeah.
You did take you took Dan Ige last week though, didn't you, Mike?
No. Oh, Mike did. Yeah.
Mike did, yeah.
Yep.
Good for you.
Yeah, man, I'm an Ige fan, man.
Yeah, it was good.
I think the featherweight division is better when Dan Ige is winning.
Right.
Well, he looked damn good winning, so if he continues to do that, I'm on board. But he hasn't looked like that to me in a long time.
$50K, Dan Ige.
I'll take it.
Speaking of, let's talk about where he might go next from here in terms of his next opponent at 145 pounds. Mark, tell us who that should be.
I'll give you a little trio. I know I'm supposed to narrow it down more than that. But the first one is kind of just my pipe dream that I throw out all the time. I really still want to see him fight Edson Barbosa again. I did not love the decision in their first fight. I would love to see them run it back. But I would guess we're probably not going to get that. So my two that I feel could be a bit more realistic that I think would be fun ones for him are Sadiq Yusuf, who is kind of due for, or Yusuf, sorry if I'm saying that wrong, who's kind of due for a name challenge. Or I also feel like Dan Ige and Billy Q throwing down could be a great one.
Okay, Omar, any names you got?
I wanted to see something real quick. Okay. Yes, I'm going to do the Giga Chikadze fight. I just didn't know if this kid had been scheduled or not yet again.
Dude, why is he like dead?
So he was supposed to fight, what's his name?
Oh, he was. You're right. You're right.
He was supposed to fight Sadiq Yusuf.
Correct. Yes.
And then he was out.
Yep.
But that was back in October. So whatever the issue is, he should be. One hopes he should be good. So I will throw Giga Chikadze in the mix there.
Quickly, Mark, give us a name for Damon Jackson in terms of his next opponent. Who that might be, could be.
I will be honest. I forgot to pick a name for Damon Jackson.
That's okay. We can move on. We have the clock is ticking.
I was going to try to find one for you.
Poor Damon Jackson.
Oh, dude, you know what I'll actually say? I have a name, and I'm going to give you a name because I like it a lot, and I think it works. I will go with Bill Algeo, who had kind of started making some waves and then got turned back recently by Andre Feely. I think him and Damon Jackson's a good scrap.
Love it.
I was going to say Billy Q, the one you were talking about before. I think that's a scrap, too.
That is.
Okay, let's go on. In the women's bantamweight division, Raquel Pennington gets the win over Ketlen Vieira by split decision, 29-28 on two of the scorecards for Pennington. Vieira getting her own 29-28. Omar, give us your reaction to this split decision. Do you think that the rightful winner won?
It was a tough fight, I thought. It's very possible my bias for Pennington has me leaning towards Pennington.
Sure.
I also wish this was a 5-round fight after watching 3 rounds of it. I do think that Pennington won that fight. I think I had her winning rounds 2 and round 3. But I think 1 and 3 might be ones that are up for contention. I'm not willing to die on that hill. If Ketlen Vieira had won that fight, I'd be fine with it. But I do think Pennington won that fight.
Okay. Mark, what about you?
Yeah, it was a tricky one because round 1 and round 3 were both pretty tough to score. A lot of points in that fight. Ketlen was maybe landing harder with one shot, but Raquel was throwing third and fourth shots in combo that would land. And round 2 was all Raquel. In that round, she was really stringing combos together. She was landing clean over the top. She had a bunch of nice knees that she mixed in late. And Ketlen Vieira did the thing she does where she does nothing. And until she gets that aspect out of her game, she is always going to have this big Achilles heel. You cannot have a whole round of the fight where you kind of just stand there. And that's what she did in round 2. So, yes, the other 2 rounds were close. I'm sure she probably thinks she deserves it off of those 2 rounds. Personally, I thought that Raquel won 3, even though it was close. Round 1, I was really torn. But either way, I am glad the decision went to Raquel because as a fight, there were 10 close minutes and there were 5 minutes where Raquel blew her out, I thought. Mm-hmm. So I'm happy to see the decision go to Raquel. It's a great winning streak that she is on. I thought maybe there was an outside chance she could get a title shot based on how things kind of shook out around her. Now we obviously saw the news today that they seem to be going with Irene Aldana, which I did not see coming. So Raquel probably is going to need one more here. But either way, she's in some pretty good standing right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Sticking with you, Mark, give us a name of where you think Pennington should go next at women's bantamweight.
So based off what I just said there with this kind of breaking rumor that they are eyeing Amanda Nunes, I don't think it's official as of yet. Correct me if I'm wrong, Omar, but they're eyeing Amanda Nunes and Irene Aldana. Mm-hmm. I think the fight to make is Raquel Pennington and Juliana Pena. And the winner of that one can get the winner of the one I just mentioned before that.
I love it. Omar, what about you?
It hasn't happened yet, which I should say. A lot of these women have already fought each other in this division. They never have.
Yeah, so Amanda Nunes currently they are looking at Amanda Nunes and Irene Aldana, like Mark said. I mean, there's not really very many people that you can. I mean, has Pennington ever fought Holly Holm? Has that actually happened?
Yeah, she got beat by Holly.
That sounds about right. If we're not going to put her back against Holly Holm, then because Holly Holm is still very much in the mix, and if Pennington's going to keep working her way up, I think it happened a long time ago, or at least a good amount of time, the last time they fought. But the Juliana Pena one, I think, would be the next one. And I got to be honest, I think Juliana Pena probably works her quite a bit. They're very similar fighters in terms of their styles and their workhorse mentality. And I think Juliana Pena just has a few more tools in the box to get that done.
Okay. Do you guys want to match up Ketlen?
I'll throw one out. She's in a tough spot now that she's taken a loss, because if it's going to be Amanda and Aldana, I do feel like Pennington and Pena makes sense. It's not like she's going to fight Holm again right now, so she's kind of in a place where below those names, it's like a little bit of a fall off, so it feels like you're kind of moving her down a bit. But you got to do it to match her up, because none of those other matchups really make sense at this moment. So I'll say maybe Macy Chasson is a fight that they could make.
I like it. Omar, if you have any other names, let me know. Otherwise, we can move on.
Yeah, we'll move on.
Okay, one more to recap, boys, before we jump into our lightning round. In the bantamweight division, Umar Nurmagomedov defeated Raoni Barcelos by knockout via body kick followed up by punch. 4:40 of round number one. Omar, go first. What is your take on Nurmagomedov still looking amazing?
Umar's a problem, man. They spent the good majority of that fight just sort of playing around and feeling each other out, and kind of in the striking realm, kind of not getting too close, not really putting too many things on the line, just really a feeling out process. And then just out of nowhere, just goes right in with a body kick, almost like I've learned it, or have it been described to me as a seatbelt kick, because it goes kind of the shin goes across the belly, almost like a seatbelt would.
Yeah, it almost looked like a knee that he then extended into a kick. You think it was
very
a kick
possible.
Jump?
Honestly, it could have been like what happened with Marlon Moraes that one time, where he was kind of going for a kick and ended up with the knee. Who knows? But either way, it landed pretty damn flush. You didn't think he got a ton of power on it, but it did land flush, and then a nice little check hook on the way down, and it caught Raoni right on the switch and just put him right out. It was a crazy little scene, and then just another super necessary shot, of course, right after. But wild little exchange that ended in a nice knockout. Umar's a problem. Umar is a definite problem.
Mark, how much of a problem do you think Umar Nurmagomedov is?
He's really good. Just to be able to put out Raoni Barcelos like that tells you that right off the bat. It is always a little bit hard to gauge how good people are off of knockouts, because like the fight was super competitive to that point. It's not like it wasn't a close fight. It was a close fight. So if he doesn't land that left as clean as he did, maybe we get 10 more minutes of a super close fight. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like he was – it's almost easier when a guy dominates a guy for a long fight to be like, wow, he's so unbelievable. When the kind of flash knockout happens, it's like, well, he did catch him. I wonder if, like, that's how it would go if they fought again. You know, so it's a little harder to evaluate. But I don't want to take anything away from him because he knocked him the fuck out, and it was unbelievable. And I rate Raoni Barcelos very highly, as I've noted on here before. To my knowledge, I don't believe he's ever been knocked out before. So simply to do that is a huge feather in Umar's cap. And he looked great. He was never hurt at any point, as dynamic as Barcelos may be. I mean, they had fun exchanges. It was fun watching them while it lasted. I really wanted to see them grapple a bit too and see kind of what Barcelos could do there. If Umar was just so much better than him in the grappling, or if it would be competitive. I want to learn more about where Umar stacks up levels wise, and I was hoping to see some grappling to learn there. But we didn't get it. But yeah, the finish was unbelievable. It was almost the opposite of the Alex Caceres same side combo that we discussed, where Alex led with the left hook and finished with the left high kick. In this case, Umar led with the left knee or kick, whichever you want to call it, and then came over with the left hook. And Raoni was still thinking about the body, and his hands were not up. And he ate a clean left hook, and that's how it goes. That was all she wrote, a monster statement for Umar to do that in that fashion. And his next fight, I believe, will be a top 10 opponent.
Speaking of, Omar, what top 10 bantamweight do you think that Umar should go up against next? Hit us. Oh,
Omar, you're muted.
You're silent. You're muted.
Sorry. There's the one where I think that he should, and then there's one that I think that he more than likely will, because I don't think the other one will probably happen. I think he should go up against Dominic Cruz.
I knew you were going to say that.
I think he should go up. I mean, stylistically, that is a fucked up fight for everybody. That is a wild little fight.
Why would you want to do that to Cruz?
I mean, Cruz is always talking about if you're the best, then you need to fight the best if you're going to keep your position. So keep your position. You haven't done shit. You just lost to Marlon Vera. You got your face smashed in. Time to fight somebody below you.
I think that's who I just said for Saeed Nurmagomedov, if I remember right. We're just trying to throw all the Nurmagomedov at Cruz.
Yep. And to be honest, man, again, if he deserves to be in the top 10, then he needs to fight for his spot in the top 10. He lost the fight against Marlon Vera. He lost it. You know, he was arguably winning a points fight in that matchup, and then got completely smashed in the face. So he can fight somebody underneath, especially somebody as, at this point, impressive as Umar Nurmagomedov. This is not some random ass top 15 guy they're going to throw it his way. This is a guy who's really doing work and putting on impressive performances and looking like somebody who could potentially beat Dominic Cruz. So
I could see, I know we always say how it's hard to get Dominic to take a fight with a guy below him, the whole deal. I could see Dominic Cruz be A, intrigued to fight someone from that camp and of that style, and B, to take the O of Umar Nurmagomedov enough to say, I'll do it.
Shit, I'll take it then. I'll take it. I'm going to stick with Dominic Cruz then. Let's go.
I like that. I considered saying it myself. I settled on Song Yadong. I believe he is ranked right next to Dominic Cruz. But I think that'd be an awesome one. I think there are a lot of angles to that fight that could be really interesting and that could tell us some more about just how good Umar may be.
That was that's more than likely to happen pick. That was what that was.
Mark, what about Raoni?
Another one. I forgot to match up the losers on this fucking
That's
episode
okay.
for
We
one
don't
reason
have
or
to.
another.
We can just march on.
I don't know what's wrong with me. And Raoni's my fucking guy, too. Dude, you know what would be dope? One's coming off a win and one's coming off a loss, but I would like to see it. We're going to touch on my boy Javid Basharat in a bit, who they just keep giving unranked fighters to and not really moving him up the line, despite the fact that he is now 14-0 overall and looks incredible. I would like to see him get a shot at Hany Barcelos and kind of break through to the rankings mix. He's asking for a ranked fighter, and I guess I could see it happen, but that'd be a fun one.
Okay. Let's go on to our lightning round. Folks, if you're not familiar with the lightning round, is where I challenge Mark and Omar to give me their lightningest picks, a phrase or two. Let's see how well they adhere to this.
The first guy in the lightning round is Javid Basharat. Oh, no, it's not. Sorry, one more before that. My bad.
Yeah. Okay, lightning round. Here we go. Roman Kopylov, round two knockout over my guy, Punahele Soriano. Mark, go first.
Yeah, Puna just never let this fight, happen, I feel. He never let the flow of the fight begin. He just went out there and, headhunted like crazy from the second the bell rang. He never threw a jab. There was no combos. There was never even really any setups. He was just winging. And, we're not going to confuse Puna with Floyd Mayweather anytime soon, but he can certainly fight a lot smarter than the way that he did fight. So I wasn't thrilled with that. And Kopylov fought well. He worked off the back foot. He evaded the big bombs, and he found his opening, which was to the body. And those were brutal body shots. And Puna's a tough dude. He was trying to eat him, but it was just one too many, and the last one turned him off. So nice win for Kopylov.
Omar, go.
Yeah, this was a disappointing one, and I think just like Mark was alluding to, it's difficult to not be annoyed by a fight like this when it comes to Puna because he can do better. We've seen him do better. He doesn't always just headhunt like this, and for whatever reason he did, and it cost him. It cost him big. He was fucked up by the end of that fight.
Yeah, man. Okay. Javid Basharat, UD over Mateos Mendonca. Omar, go first.
I like me some Javid. I'm a big fan of this guy and the way that he fights. I had him winning all 3 rounds. I know one of the judges had him round 1 go to Mendonca. I thought it was all 3 rounds. Maybe the first round was closer than I realized, but I thought it was pretty clear.
Mark.
I had all 3 for him too. I love Javid Basharat, man. I've been talking this guy up since his debut. They put him across from a clearly skilled finisher in Mendonce, and it didn't matter one bit. He used Mendonce's aggression. He pulled him into clean strikes all fight long. He mixed in the takedowns. He showed off his grappling, and he just did what Javid Basharat does. It is time, as I alluded to a moment ago, it is time to give this guy someone real. I don't need any more debuting fighters or lower-level fighters, no matter how much hype they come in with like this dude Mendonce did. It's time for Javid Basharat to be in a real fight.
So it's Mendonce then?
Yes.
My bad.
You just let us go on and just kept saying Mendonca?
I almost jumped in a couple times, but you guys were on to the next words already, and I was like, oh, I'm too late.
So, it happens. Okay, Abdul Razak Al Hassan, round 2 knockout over Claudio Ribeiro. Mark, sticking with you, go first.
That was how I saw this one going. I saw Ribeiro on Contender Series, and he's got big fucking power for sure, but the technique just isn't there yet. And across from a guy who's got as much power as he does in Al Hassan, it was going to come down to who got hit clean first, and I trusted the technique on the side of Al Hassan, and that's what it was. So a big KO win for him.
Omar?
Ribeiro had a real interesting walkout ceremony where his mother, perhaps, or some female within an older woman within his camp came over and gave him, must have been one of the craziest pep talks I've ever seen. This shit was so intense. A lot of emotion in there, and then flipped over to another male, either trainer or maybe perhaps family member or both, who also gave him a really intense stare down and conversation. My wife was very confused by this, and she was wondering why this is happening. And then at the same time, I was like, man, if he loses this fight after all this, it's going to be pretty fucking horrible. And then he got completely destroyed in that second round. I mean, that's as bad as strikes get. It was right hand. It was like watching somebody nail something into a wooden board. Just right hand, right hand, kept going down with each right hand, just lower and lower until he reached the ground. It was a beating in that second round. First round was a little back and forth, a little bit more even. One would even say Al Hassan might have even lost that first round. But the second round, he killed that kid.
Okay, Matias Rebecki, UD over Nick Fior. Omar, sticking with you. Take it.
Robeski?
Excuse me.
Man,
I'm here to help on this one.
These letters are not helping me, man. Can't read.
It might have even been Rebeshki, like a sh. Now I can't remember, but it was either a s or a sh.
All we know is our initial reactions of Rebecki are incorrect.
Yes.
Incorrect.
I think it was Rebeshki.
What a wild little performance from him, man. That you want to talk about aggression? That's a guy with aggression. That's a guy with forward movement. That's a guy with takedowns under his belt. That is a guy who will not be denied. That was a freight train of a man. So that was a hell of a performance from him.
Mark.
What a fucking tank that guy is. I mentioned this last week. This is a guy who I was reading people saying he could be very similar to Mateusz Gamrot out of the Polish scene, of a guy who's going to kind of just come in and be in the mix pretty quickly. I don't know if we saw that much skill from him, but it might be in there. I think he's got to kind of figure out his pace a little bit. But he showed a lot of good signs. And having that guy walk you down seems friggin' miserable. That is an aggressive, powerful man. Everything he throws has bad intentions. And like I said, he may have come out a little too hot pace-wise, which he kind of paid for as the fight went on. But he switched to the wrestling, and he seems to be just as good there, if not even better. And that allowed him to get it done. So he's a guy with potential going forward for sure.
I think his reaction to his lack of gas and the fact that it really didn't stop him from doing whatever he wanted to that kid is just signs that his mental fortitude is on some other shit.
I agree with that.
Okay, in the flyweight division, Alan Nascimento defeats Carlos Hernandez by submission via rear naked choke. Mark, take it.
Dude, Alan Nascimento might be a problem. He didn't come into the UFC with a ton of fanfare. He kind of took the long road. I think he was on Contender Series and he didn't get in, had to take some more fights and so on. And he lost his debut to Tagir Ulanbekov. But looking back on it now, it was a very close fight. And Tagir Ulanbekov has looked pretty good otherwise. And Nascimento's a training partner of Charles Oliveira, and he's now won 2 in a row since that debut loss. He ruined Jake Hadley's debut, who was a big prospect coming in and who Nascimento pretty much handled. And now he quickly disposes of Carlos Hernandez. Carlos Gonzalez is the former Colorado Rocky baseball player, so that's where my mind is at. But, another flyweight to watch. There are many at this moment.
Omar.
Yeah, man. I don't know. Now that you say that, I might want to go back and take a look closer at it because it seemed like a lot of the situations they were in ended up becoming opportunistic or were opportunistic when, to get to those moments. But, coming from the Oliveira camp, those guys are very, very sneaky with their jiu-jitsu, and things that seem very opportunistic are things that have been set up 3-4 moves before. So it's very possible that Nascimento is just that sneaky, and I may not have caught it. But regardless, his ability to control from the ground, I thought was fantastic. I mean, as good as that performance was, the one thing you can't take away from Carlos Hernandez is he was scrappy. That kid didn't stop. He wasn't, at no point was he trying to give up, but he got caught in an anaconda, man. Not an anaconda choke, in a figurative anaconda. Yeah. And got choked out real bad. And standing. And it wasn't the first choke attempt of that round. He had already at least 1 or 2 of those prior. But by the time the round was almost over, he finally sunk that choke deep. He was standing up and went down, and it was done. I don't even think he went down, actually. I think he tapped while he was standing.
Yep.
He tapped while he was standing, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It's nasty. It's a nasty rear naked choke.
Okay, let's get back onto this.
How's that for lightning round, Mike?
Okay, in the featherweight division, Dan Argueta defeated my guy, Nick Aguirre, by unanimous decision, 30-27 across the board. Omar, staying with you.
Aguirre's a scrappy kid, man. Another one who didn't stop moving the entire time, didn't stop trying to fight. But Argueda's wrestling credentials, or at least his pedigree, seems to be much higher than Aguirre's, and he used it. He used it to his advantage. I don't think there was any room for interpretation in that fight. It was from bell to bell a working from Dan Argueda.
Mark?
Yeah, the first round of this was actually some real competitive grappling exchanges. Argueda did probably get the better of the round, but it was a good one. But then from then on, it was Argueda who was able to keep the pressure, combined with his strength advantage that he obviously had in there, and his wrestling. It was enough to take the cards. But Aguirre didn't look grossly overmatched or anything like that. He just kind of got outworked in this one, and Argueda's now on the board with his first UFC W.
Yep. Okay, last one. Charles Johnson, round 1, TKO over Jimmy Flick. Mark?
Jimmy Flick had a couple opportunities to work on the ground, and he's very dangerous down there historically, but he couldn't take advantage of them. We've seen Charles Johnson stay safe on the ground before with guys like Muhammad Makayev, so he may have some eventually he got tapped, but he may – wait, did he? Yeah. He may have some underrated jits, but on the feet, Jimmy Flick was in trouble. Charles Johnson kept switching stances, and then he would step into the open side, like going body head, and Flick couldn't adjust to it. And it was a kind of a quick stoppage for me. Flick was maybe okay, but he was covering up like an odd amount, so I feel like he was almost asking for the ref to intervene. And Charles Johnson was looking very dangerous, so I don't hate it, and it's a big first UFC finish for Charles Johnson.
Omar, take us home.
Yeah, Charles Johnson is equal parts ridiculous looking and equal parts intimidating. I found his forward pressure to be really disturbing. Maybe it was a specific matchup. Maybe he won't have the ability to do that with higher ranked opponents, but his ability to move forward, land the shots he was landing, getting out of the way and continuously trying to move forward, the ground game as well. The man looks ridiculously strong, like not just physically, but his reaction and his power and everything. He just looks he looked significantly stronger than Jimmy Flick in that fight. And it got to be painful to watch Jimmy Flick continuously on the ground, like trying to survive against Johnson. And it got to a point where I think the referee too just didn't want to see any more. I feel like I don't remember Charles Johnson being that dominant in his previous fight, even when it was competitive. But if this is what Charles Johnson's bringing to the table with everybody going forward, I'm on board.
Okay.
Real quick, because this lightning round has not gone on long enough. Did you guys hear the post-fight interview from Abdul Razak Al Hassan?
No.
About the one I sent you guys with Joaquin Buckley?
It's one of the greatest fucking things I've ever seen in my life.
Oh my God, that's incredible. It's absolutely incredible.
Fuck that bitch. Fuck him. Joaquin, you are a bitch. You are a bitch. You hear me? Does he hear me? You are a bitch. That is one of the greatest post-fight interviews I've ever seen.
Every time he finished, which was, he went into the same exact wording like 11 different times. He would go, "I'm sorry."
No, but the best part was all the media guys there, because they, he would go into this rant, he would stop, he would say sorry, next question, and then at one point one guy was just like, saying, he's just like, and Buckley, and he was like, oh, Buckley, what a bitch, he's a bitch. Do you know I was supposed to fight him? He is a bitch. Yo, I love.
Dude, you're good at that accent, man. That's pretty good.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
But yeah, at the very end, right as he was about to get up, when they were like saying thank you, one guy went, "Joaquin Buckley," and Al Hassan laughed at that one. The whole room laughed.
Dude, he was so good, good.
It was great.
I think he gained a few fans out of that. That interview was gold, absolute gold. Okay, I'm done now.
Okay, let's move on. Let's put a bow on this UFC fight night by finding out who rose and who fell in Mark's very own rankings system that we affectionately call the Priaulx Rankings. Mark.
Mike, you'll be happy here as you try to keep the pace of this show moving, because it is a very quick one this week. There are no fallers to speak of, and there are only 2 risers. Working from the top of the card, the first riser is going to be Umar Nurmagomedov. He moves from number 19 to number 13 in my bantamweight rankings. The UFC had already jumped him up after his last fight. I was waiting for a win that was worthy of that kind of jump. He hadn't really had it as of yet. Now he gets a name win over a guy who's proven himself in Raoni Barcelos, and I'm comfortable moving him up into the mix. So he is now my number 13 ranked bantamweight, and as we have alluded to on here, he will have a big fight coming up for himself. And the second riser is the man we just finished speaking about, Charles Johnson. He moves from number 28 to number 21 in the flyweight ranks. Nice little jump for him. A lot of what happens at flyweight, it seems, like beyond the 20, 25-ish range, is that guys come in, they fight like one or two fights, they can't really hang, and they're out of the UFC. And him moving a 2-1 now off this last win, I feel like he has kind of proven that he's a guy who we'll be seeing some more of. So a nice step forward for Charles Johnson.
Wait, that's it?
And that's it. That's the whole rankings for the week.
Okay. All right, boys, let's go into the headlines in the MMA world by finding out what's new with Omar in our segment Inside the MMA Sphere.
All right. So a lot of the news was dominated by Francis Ngannou within the last week. I guess really the last 3 or 4 days or so. But we do have a couple of things that I wanted to touch on. Not really very long at all. The first thing, though, is a quick rest in peace memorial to Victoria Lee, sister of the Lee brother and sister duo, Angela Lee and Christian Lee of the ONE FC family. Victoria Lee was of the ONE FC family herself, if I'm not mistaken. And I don't think anybody actually knows what happened to this poor girl. She was only 18 years old. People are going to speculate. We're not going to do that here. But just rest in peace. 18 years old. Tragedy. There's not a particular word that's going to work that's going to properly convey how fucked up this really is. So,
yep,
it is tragic.
Agree.
It is tragic.
Sad one, man. Definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
Rest in peace to her.
Next on the list, the saga of the fallout of James Krause continues. Jeff Molina has now been suspended due to allegations that he was, quote unquote, involved in some substantial way related to the Krause betting scandal. He was suspended on December 15th, and will remain on suspension until the investigation continues. The Nevada Deputy Attorney General stated evidence has come to light leading to allegations about respondent Jeff Molina, that he was involved in some substantial way in the gaming scheme currently undergoing investigation relating to James Krause. So it's not looking good, man. That investigation continues to seem to be piling up a lot more shit as the days go on. So, yikes. Next on the list, a quick little rumor of Charles Oliveira versus Beneil Dariush is in the works for UFC 285 on March 4th. That will be amazing. It'll be my time to shine if Dariush wins that fight. And let's get into a few more of these fight announcements. Brad Tavares is out against his fight with Robocop, Gregory Rodriguez. He will now be facing Bruno Ferreira at UFC 283 this weekend. Austin Lane versus Junior Tafa has been added to UFC's 284 event on February 11th. I'm going to go out on a limb and say Junior Tafa is the son of Justin Tafa.
Junior? I didn't even process. I'm thinking of Justin Tafa as you're saying that.
Google his picture real quick because I thought it was Justin Tafa. He looks just fucking like him. Like scary like him. But it's not him. So that fight has been adding. That'll be very interesting to see what his son's got.
Could it be his son though? This guy is 26 already. Justin Tafa ain't that old.
Could be brothers.
No,
that's
dude,
fair.
Justin Tafa's 29.
Oh, okay, brothers. Justin Tafa's 20. He doesn't look 20.
He looks older, but I thought he was going to be in his 30s. I didn't think he was old enough. Yeah.
Well, all right. So baby brothers then. I guess
Could be
brothers
brother.
is probably the way to go. Yeah. But they look like stupid alike. It's weird. Next on the list, Jordan Wright versus Zach Pauga has been added to UFC's Vegas 69 event on February 18th. Now that Francis Ngannou is gone from the UFC, I am not going to say has been released because that is horseshit. But now that Francis Ngannou is no longer with the UFC, John Jones versus Cyril Gane, as we alluded to earlier, will be fighting for the vacant heavyweight title that has been going down on the in UFC's 285 event on March 4th. I want to know what the over-under is for John Jones showing up for that fight. Just let me know. Valentina Shevchenko versus Alexa Grasso has also been added to that UFC 285 event on March 4th. Piotr Yan versus Merab Dvalishvili has been targeted for UFC's Vegas 71 card, headlining the March 11th date. Gunnar Nelson versus Daniel Rodriguez has been added to UFC's 286 card on March 18th. Along with that card, Veronica Macedo versus Juju Miller has been also added, as well as Mohamed Mokaev versus Rafael Filo. Next on the list, Alex Caceres is back in the mix versus Nate Landwehr. They have been added to the UFC San Antonio card on March 25th. Michelle Waterson Gomez versus Luana Pinheiro has been added to UFC's 287 event on April 8th. My other girl, not the Yasmin Haragui, but the other side of that first fantastic fight, Yasmin Lucindo. We'll go with that. Yep. Versus Melissa Martinez has been added to UFC's April 22nd event. You will hear me standing for this Ismail as well. And last but not least, Cal Rosa versus this show's favorite featherweight, Norma Dumont, added to UFC's April 22nd event. And that is all we have for you this week.
I like Norma.
I also like Norma. It was part funny, but also part true. She's the one I feel like is the most consistent in featherweight at this point. I want to give her the belt just for that.
Just for that, man. She is consistent.
She keeps the featherweight division alive.
It's true.
All right, boys. Let's do this. Let us begin. Let us talk UFC 283. Teixeira versus Hill. 2 title fights going down this Saturday in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Man, I can't wait. Great card. Especially great main card. My God. Got Paul Craig, Johnny Walker, Jessica Andrade, Lauren Murphy, Gilbert Burns, Neil Magny. Figgy Moreno, 4, folks.
When was the last time they were in Brazil?
Oh,
it's pre-pandemic, right? We haven't even touched it since 2020. Or since before 2020, I should say.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's got to be correct.
I'm
going to be excited back. I can't wait to hear that. Vamos ahead.
I was just going to say the same thing. It's been a long time, but I miss the Hubat Mohed. Yep. I miss it.
For sure.
Is this a normal time? Well, normal for us?
This is a fantastic question.
Yeah, we're almost the same time as Brazil. Time zone. I think we might be 1 hour different than Brazil.
10 p.m. Eastern time.
Right now?
Yes.
Well,
no. I'm saying the fight is 10 p.m. Eastern time.
The main card.
Normal time.
The main card. Mm-hmm.
My point was that I think we're on a very similar time zone to Brazil, so it's not really different. But I guess because we're in daylight savings right now, we're 2 hours different. Usually I thought we were only 1 hour different. Right now we're 2.
Yes.
Okay.
In the eastern coast.
Let's see. We're going to discuss and pick, I believe, 7 of the fights on this card. It's a pretty lengthy card. Before we get into any of those fights, gentlemen, are there any fights or fighters that you want to spotlight for our listeners and viewers?
I will spotlight a couple real quick. I'm sure Mark has a couple other ones. One of them we might overlap, I would assume. Terrence McKinney is my first spotlight. Definitely watch out for him. Terrence McKinney is a phenom. His abilities and his performances have been nothing short of spectacular. He had a fuck up. That's going to happen early on, I feel like, in a lot of people's careers. I don't think it says anything about an overall future. I think his star is bright. His ceiling is high. I would expect nothing short of a fantastic performance from him in this card. So definitely watch out for him. He's on the early prelims. And the other one that I was looking at, we did put him on there. Okay, just wanted to make sure. The other one I wanted to highlight was the Warlley Alves-Nicholas Dalby fight. Yes. That fight is also a fantastic fight between both guys. Nicholas Dalby and Warlley Alves both have their own credentials. I think it's a little bit of a banger. Very curious as to why it's all the way at the bottom of the prelims, early prelims, but them be the breaks apparently in the UFC. So there it is.
Mark, any other names you want to point out?
Yeah, usually with the pay-per-views, we try to do the whole card for you guys, but this one had so many fights in the undercard where it was debutantes in the fight, so we kind of skipped ahead to the fights that matter a bit more. But the one that is not necessarily that is the one Umar just highlighted, which is Warlley Alves and Nicholas Dalby. I do like that fight a lot. These are two guys that have reached high heights at points. Dalby has that draw with Darren Till. Warlley Alves has the win over Colby Covington. So we have seen the talent that they possess, and this one's a tough one to call. I could see it kind of being Alves early or Dalby on the cards if he can get past the early part, but that's a great fight. I expect that to be a banger. And then I will highlight two brothers who are debuting, Ismael Bonfim and Gabriel Bonfim. Ismael's fighting Terrence McKinney. Gabriel is fighting Munir Lazez. They are both guys coming in with some hype who are names to watch. Gabriel is the one who most seem to think is the better one. They're both kind of getting thrown in against legit dudes in Terrence McKinney and Munir Lazez. So we will see how that goes for them. And then just two legit guys, again, who are on this undercard fighting. They're both fighting late replacements. Are Thiago Moises, who was supposed to be fighting Guram Kutateladze, which would have been fucking awesome, and Gregory Rodriguez, who was supposed to fight Brad Tavares. So they're both fighting late replacements, but they're both studs and guys to watch. And the dude Gregory Rodriguez is fighting is a guy who comes to bang. And if you know anything about Gregory Rodriguez, he will be ready. So that is not one you should get a snack during.
Facts.
Okay, well, let us begin. In the heavyweight division, the featured bout on the early prelims on ESPN and on ESPN Plus and UFC Fight Pass. In the heavyweight division, Shamil Abdurakhimov, I'm butchering this, Abdurakhimov, whatever, taking on Jailton Almeida. Dropping shit.
You're a mess.
I have to include this one, guys, because Jailton Almeida on our previous show previewing the 2023 calendar year was a guy that we all had something to say about. So, Mark, let me start with you. Give us your take on this heavyweight bout and your prediction.
Yeah, he, if I remember right, he may have been our most top breakout prediction of all in terms of our unanimous guys. We all loved Jailton Almeida this year. And he is a minus 1,000 favorite in this fight, accordingly. Shamil Abdurakhimov is plus 600 as the dog. And, yeah, you know where we're going with this one. Shamil's a big dude, and he is absolutely the best fighter that Jailton Almeida has fought to this point. He will have a big weight advantage on Jailton, who has been coming into these heavyweight fights around like 220, because he's a guy who goes back and forth. But I don't think it matters. I don't think it stops Jailton from ragdolling him like he has done to everyone else. I think it's fairly academic. I think Jailton's such an athlete, and Shamil just will not be able to hang. I'll say maybe he could survive into round two just based off the size, that maybe it's a bit harder for Jailton to get him out of there. Granted, a round one finish would not shock me in the least. As I'm thinking about this, I want to say round one now. I could see it that he gets a couple good shots, an early takedown, and that because of the ground and pound, it actually opens up earlier than I was going to say. So I'm going to switch. I was going to say round two. Yeah, I'm going to say some ground and pound from Jailton opens it up, and he can transition to a choke. Round one, rear naked choke.
Omar.
Abdurakhimov has been getting destroyed for the last few years at this point. And Almeida has a certain type of momentum right now with the skill set that he has that would be ridiculous to pick against him. I'm very high on him. I think his ability is through the roof. I think his ground game is absolutely fantastic. His accuracy with the power that he has behind it, his striking is pretty damn great. But I think this one ends on the ground. I don't actually think he ends up getting a submission just because I don't think it'll take that much effort. And I think he ends up ground and pounding him out. Round 1, TKO.
We are in agreement. I'm taking Mr. Jailton Almeida by beast mode, first round. I'll say TKO. Pretty easy pick for me.
Facts.
Almeida's a beast.
Mm-hmm.
Yup.
Let's move on to the prelims card. The feature bout now on the prelims on ABC, ESPN, and ESPN Plus in the light heavyweight division. Mark, tighten that cap real quick. We have Mauricio Shogun Hua taking on Ihor Potieria. My goodness, this is a real throwback fight. Shogun Hua really needing no introduction at all. I will quickly say he is the 41-year-old out of Curitiba, Brazil, 27-13 as a pro with 1 draw, 27 knockouts. That's a 78% knockout rate. He's been around, and he has never really stopped. He has slowly been taking fights over the past few years. Most recently, a loss against OSP in May of last year. He lost that fight by split decision. So yeah, most recently his wins were over Nogueira. He drew against Paul Craig. He TKO'd Tyson Pedro. He TKO'd John Vellante back in 2017. He beat Corey Anderson. He's the man. Ihor Potieria, the duelist, the 26-year-old out of Kyiv, Ukraine. He's 18-3 as a pro with 8 knockouts, 6 subs. He is looking to get back in the win column after a TKO loss at the hands of Nikolai Negumereanu back in July. Omar, hit us first this time with your assessment real quick of this matchup. Your feelings about Shogun Hua fighting at the age of 41, and ultimately your pick.
Shogun still fighting hurts my heart. Has hurt my heart for quite some time. At the same time, I do think that this is a fight that is winnable for him. I don't think I would have preferred somebody with a little bit more purpose behind it. We've talked about the
dual retirement fight idea of him and Lyoto Machida. Is that what you were going to bring up?
Lyoto Machida is who I was looking for, yes. So we've had our thoughts about the Lyoto Machida fight and potentially giving him somebody with a little bit more value behind their name, something with a little bit more legacy to it. But here we are. It's very possible that Mauricio is so far gone that this Potieria gentleman will be able to lay him out. I choose to believe otherwise. It is his last fight. I love Shogun. Shogun got me partially into MMA, watching a lot of his stomping destruction in Pride. He was one of the first championship fights I think I ended up watching live at the UFC when he fought Lyoto Machida the first time and beat the Christ out of Lyoto Machida, if I remember rightly. And then
the second time?
Yeah. Right, that was when he busted his face, right?
Yeah, Machida edged
broke
him.
his whole orbital.
Machida
he edged him in the first one.
Scorecards in the first one.
Yep. Right. So I mean, I've got tons of. I've played with that man in the game. I can't even tell you how many times.
Fair.
So I've got tons of memories of Shogun. I've got memories of Ninja as well, his brother.
Yep.
So it's a legacy, man. It's a legacy. Fight. It's something that we are going to stop watching at this point. And I think it's well deserved. The man has had an amazing career. He's had an amazing modeling career as well down in Brazil. I don't think he needs to do it for the money, but the fuck do I know? I'm just glad to see. I'm hopeful that he's got enough marbles left over to enjoy the rest of his life comfortably, and that he hasn't done so much damage that now it's going to significantly impact his quality of life. Because we all know Shogun got that name for a reason. That man has been in war after war after war after war. The fact that his face doesn't look like Vanderlei Silva's at this point is fucking a godsend.
Since he was a teenager.
Yeah, and I mean he's been training and fighting in an area where training is fighting. So there was no holds bars down there. There wasn't pad work and we're fighting. Today we're fighting. And then tomorrow we fight somebody else.
I don't mean started MMA as a teenager. I mean like in Pride fighting as a teenager.
Oh yeah.
It's been a minute that this
man
has been a pro.
Yeah. So yeah, I've rambled on long enough. Mark, what are your thoughts here about Shogun?
All right, so they made my man Shogun the dog. He is plus 175 despite the unprovenness of his opponent. I guess they think Shogun is that washed. Ihor Potieria is minus 220 as the favorite. This one sucks, to be honest. Such a whack, awful retirement fight for Shogun. I just hope he wins it. As you alluded to, it would have been so much cooler for this Shogun Machida idea that had been thrown out there in a double retirement fight in Brazil. I would have been so fucking into that. And instead we get this fight against Ihor Potieria, who means nothing to anyone. He's not even a big prospect that they're like trying to build. He may very well be nothing. Like his regional wins don't feature anything relevant. He got finished in his debut by Nurmagomedov. So we don't really know what he is yet, but maybe they're just trying to get Shogun to win. I'm not sure. But for as shopworn as Shogun may look, he's still been in close fights. Like the Paul Craig fight was close, at least the first one. The OSP fight was close. It's not like he's in there to be beaten. So I'm hoping he can get one last victory and one last moment in Brazil here. It would be awesome if he could. And I am picking Shogun Rua by round 1 knockout via soccer kicks. And before you get in the comments and tell me that soccer kicks aren't allowed, I fucking know that. But Shogun Rua, round 1 soccer kicks is how this fight ends. Because that's how it ends in my dreams, and I'm not picking anything else. Shogun Rua, pride never die.
That's how it is in my dreams. You don't give up on your dreams, kids.
I will be the contrarian here.
Fuck you.
I do not like this matchup. I do not like this matchup. As much as I wish that I can join you in retirement, like nice feelings land. There are better matchups for this guy's retirement fight. So I just see Potieria being just too young, too strong, too big for the aging Shogun, and I'm going to say that he's going to get him out of there in the first round. I'll say by TKO. I think he's going to hurt him. Wow. We're going to see Shogun, his legs give out, and Potieria is going to swarm him, and the ref is going to have to intervene. Round 1, TKO.
Boo this man.
Potieria.
How does that knife feel in your back, Mark?
Terrible. My real pick is Shogun decision, by the way.
Okay.
That is also my pick, is Shogun decision. I would love for him to walk off with a knockout, though.
Oh my God, it'd be amazing.
Of course.
Amazing.
Okay, next up, one of Shogun's most recent opponents, a man who he has tied and a man who has beaten Shogun. That is Paul Craig, taking on Johnny Walker in the light heavyweight division. Fun fight, great matchup. Paul Craig, of course, the 35-year-old out of Scotland. Bear Jew is his nickname, which we've mentioned on this show before. He is 16-5 with 1 draw, 3 knockouts, 13 submission wins on his record. He's most recently coming off of a UD loss at the hands of Volkan Ozdemir, looking to get back in the win column. Ozdemir snapped a 4-fight win streak for Bear Jew. Standing across from him in the octagon will be Johnny Walker this Saturday night, the 30-year-old out of Rio, the hometown boy this time. He is 19-7 as a pro with 15 knockouts on his professional record, and he is coming off of a win over Ion Cutelaba by rear naked choke. Mark, let's start with you this time. Give us your assessment and your pick of Walker versus Bear Jew Craig.
All right, so your favorite here by almost 2-1 is Johnny Walker. He is minus 195. Paul Craig is plus 160 as the underdog. I never imagined I would be saying this about a Johnny Walker fight, but I don't have any trouble picking him here. He has a 3-inch height and a 6-inch reach advantage, and the size, the strength, and the athleticism that he has, I think, are all just a built-in counter to Paul Craig's game. Like, is Walker sloppy enough at times for Craig to still catch him in something somehow? Yes, 100%. Craig is slick as fuck. We know this. But Johnny Walker can grapple himself. Look at what he just did in his last fight against Ion Cutelaba. So it's not like he's some slouch down there. And I just think the physicality is a big hurdle for Paul Craig to overcome. I really think the size and the strength are going to play a big factor in limiting what Paul Craig is able to pull off in terms of the grappling, and I think he eventually gets caught. And on the feet, Johnny Walker can be pretty damn free because there's no danger coming back at him. And a guy who's that creative and that big and that powerful, getting to be free with his strikes for the most part, I don't think goes well for Paul Craig. So for the first time in ever, I'm actually confidently picking Johnny Walker to win a fight. Give me him by round 2 knockout.
Omar, what's your take and your pick?
So, I do think this is a tough matchup for Craig. I do think the exposure to the high-level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu that Johnny Walker has makes this not as much of a slam dunk as I think some of the other ones have been, even in times where Craig has been losing. Like, those opportunistic submissions, I think, make a lot more sense with guys who maybe that's not really their bread and butter or have been, again, exposed to some of the elite grappling of the world. With all that being said, I'm going to go against Mark on this one. I think that Paul Craig is just pretty nasty. If you watch the Ozdemir fight, his biggest problem was getting him down to the ground. And I don't think he's going to have that problem with Johnny Walker. And a part of me thinks that Johnny Walker fucks around so much in that cage that it's very possible that something sloppy or something ridiculous gets him down to the ground. And Paul Craig doesn't need much generally when he gets you down to the ground and you start playing in his game. So I think he comes away with it. I'm going to go with submission round 3.
Yeah, it's an interesting matchup. I love the resiliency of Paul Craig. He is never out of the fight. I have always liked the size and athleticism of Johnny Walker for the weight class. I would have loved it if he didn't fuck around so much earlier on and got knocked out by Corey Anderson. And he has now only won 2 of his last 6 fights. I still don't fully trust Johnny Walker.
Same.
But his performance over Cutelaba has given me enough wind in the sails to say that. And also, he just got married. He's got married to that girl. So I want to say, Omar, I think you pointed this out about somebody else last episode. About, like, Dad Cerrone and Dad somebody else.
It was about Raquel Pennington.
Yeah, it was about Pennington.
Dad Pennington. I think, Mom Pennington. Maybe husband Walker is going to be a little more settled down, and he's just going to stop trying to clown around and be a little bit more of a, I don't know, workman-like in there and just trying to get the win. And he should get the win in terms of his attributes. I will say Johnny Walker by 3rd round knockout.
The difficulty is I don't find Ion Cutelaba at that point in Johnny Walker's career a significant name to work too much off of, right? Because
yeah, sure.
We've seen Johnny Walker get, like, first of all, fight boring and fight tentatively and fight from the outside and not take any chances and basically spend an entire fight being extremely boring. And now we've also seen against Ion Cutelaba that he can run somebody over. So we've seen his extremes, and at this point, it's also kind of where he shows up, how he shows up. You know what I mean? If he kind of plays the point fighting game and doesn't really advance too much, you know, it might work in his favor, considering, you know, Paul Craig isn't really trying to play that game and can't really play that game either. Paul Craig is going to want to crash and come inside. So it all really depends on which Johnny Walker decides to show up.
100%. All right, moving on over to the ladies' flyweight division. Lauren Murphy taking on Jessica Andrade. Lauren Lucky Murphy, 39 years old, out of Anchorage, Alaska. 16-5 as a pro, 8 knockouts on her record. Coming off of a decision win over Miesha Tate. Before that, she challenged for the belt in a losing effort against Valentina. Before that, she rode a 5-fight win streak into that title fight. Jessica Andrade, the 31-year-old out of Brazil, 23-9, 9 knockouts, 8 subs on her record, coming off back-to-back wins over Cynthia Calvillo and Amanda Lemos back in April. Mark, start us off. Give us your take and your pick for Lauren Murphy against Jessica Andrade.
All right, so I knew she'd be favored. I didn't think she'd be favored like this. Jessica Andrade is minus 500. Lauren Murphy is plus 370. Lauren Murphy is certainly the bigger girl here. She's got 4 inches of height. She has a 6-inch reach advantage. She, in her last fight, I thought looked the best she has ever looked against Miesha Tate. She always manages to make her opponents look worse than they are. She is a strong girl. She is durable. And I don't think any of that matters. I rate Jessica Andrade that highly. It doesn't matter if she's at 115 or 125. I do like her more at 115, but I think she's fine here. And I just think she is a higher level fighter than Lauren Murphy in every way. I don't mean that she's going to run Lauren over because, like I said, Lauren is durable. And she's a vet, and she kind of knows how to survive in there. But I think Jessica Andrade wins at least 2 of these rounds, if not all 3 rounds. I think the speed is a factor. I think the power is a factor. I think Murphy even may have a hard time hitting her at times just because of the difference in the athleticism. Give me Jessica Andrade by a clear UD.
Omar?
So I think for this fight, for me, Jessica Andrade is the clear pick. Did you guys know what her nickname is? Because I just looked it up and I had no idea what this was.
But
Estaca?
Yep.
Do you guys know what it means?
It's not.
I'm trying to remember what it means. I was going to say fire hydrant, but that's not it. I'm thinking of Paul Harris's fire hydrant.
It means
No, I know it. It's yes, I was just going to say it because I always associate pile driver with when she pile drives Rose Namajunas.
What a great fucking nickname.
Yeah.
What an absolutely solid nickname. Yeah. Anyway, I think Andrade is better everywhere. I think she's stronger everywhere. Lauren Murphy, if nothing else, is a worker. That woman puts on some work rate when she's in there. The volume in her strikes is very high. Her forward pressure is very very demanding. You can see what she ended up doing to Miesha Tate in that octagon, which I don't know. I definitely didn't see any of that coming. So Lauren Murphy is definitely not a gimme fight, I think, in that specific sense. However, Jessica Andrade's pedigree, both in the wrestling and with her heavy strikes, it's nothing to be sneezed at. And the girl has championship competitiveness. She's been in there. She's held the belt. She's lost the belt. She's got a certain set of experience and a certain set of skills that I think make her... I think that minus 500 is pretty damn accurate as to where she should be in terms of the odds. I think she hurts Lauren Murphy. I think it happens in the middle of the fight, and I think she ends up finishing her by the 3rd round. TKO.
Like it.
You know, I don't think I'm alone here, but I have never rated Lauren Murphy super high. But the girl wins.
Yeah.
Yep.
She just wins. Before Valentina, the last time she lost was 2018.
To Sarge.
Granted, a couple of those wins could have been arguable in that stretch.
True. That is true. But yeah, I agree. Totally agree. I think I fully expect Andrade to to outshine Lauren Murphy here in pretty much every department. And I think that Murphy is tough enough to last. She's only been knocked out once. She's never been subbed. So I will say Andrade, 3 rounds, unanimous decision. Easy pick for me. What are the odds again?
Minus 500 for Andrade.
Okay.
370 for Murphy.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on to the Coco main event. This could easily be probably a main event of a fight night on its own.
Oh, for sure.
100%.
Yeah.
We have Gilbert Burns facing off against Neil Magny in the welterweight division. Gilbert Burns, 36 years old, out of Brazil, hometown guy in this fight, 20-5 as a pro, coming off of that amazing fight, which was a losing effort for him against Khamzat Chimaev. He'll be standing across the Haitian sensation Neil Magny, out of Brooklyn, New York. He is 27-9 as a pro, coming off a win against D-Rod back in November. Omar, let's start with you. Give us your take and your pick. Magny versus Burns.
I love this fight. The thing I think is super interesting at this point is Neil Magny has had his run-in with Shavkat Rakhmonov, and Gilbert Burns has had his run-in with Khamzat, sort of the two prodigies of the division currently. Well, at least of the... Rakhmonov is a middleweight, specifically a middleweight, right? Or is he also a welterweight?
No, he's a welterweight. That's why he fought Neil Magny.
Right. Khamzat has made things very difficult for me as to where fucking people are at this point.
Chimaev is the tweener.
But yes, that definitely makes sense. So I think it's interesting that they both kind of have fought these prodigies that have been up and coming in the welterweight division. We know that we've talked about Neil Magny kind of being the best of the gatekeepers, the best thing about gatekeepers, making sure that we're getting real contenders in the welterweight division. When you beat Neil Magny, that definitely means something. His name carries weight, it carries value. Gilbert Burns is another man I think you could say all those same things about, if not more. His Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu pedigree, I think, is quite unmatched in MMA at this point, especially with Damian Maia no longer in the mix, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think that dude's here anymore, right? Like, I didn't mix.
No.
He's gone. Okay. So, I mean, Gilbert Burns' pedigree at this point when it comes to that skill set, I think, is quite unmatched. You've got people like Charles Oliveira and maybe a small handful of folks. But I think Neil Magny's got his fucking hands full here, like, everywhere. Gilbert Burns' striking is very, very effective, very difficult, very heavy-handed, and his ground game, like I just said, is ridiculous. Neil Magny, I think, is a master of the fundamentals, if nothing else. But I think Gilbert Burns is so skilled in the ground game that I think he goes beyond the fundamentals, and I think he catches up to Neil Magny. So I'm going to go with Gilbert Burns, submission, round 3.
Mark, take it.
All right, so Gilbert is a big favorite. He is minus 475. Neil Magny is plus 350. Yes. As usual for Neil, actually even more so in this fight because of the stature of Gilbert, there's a big size advantage. Gilbert, remember, is a former lightweight. Neil's going to have a 5-inch height and a 9-inch reach advantage, and that's a lot. So my question on this fight is, will Gilbert Burns grapple? Because I fear a little bit that he feels like he needs to make a statement to get back in the title picture in this welterweight division. You kind of have Chimaev, who's moved past him. You have Colby getting thrown around to possibly fight Chimaev. Obviously, you have Leon and Usman fighting for the title. Gilbert seems pissed that Bilal hasn't moved above him in the rankings. So I hope he doesn't come in thinking he's got to do something spectacular, not to mention he's in Brazil. So I could see him coming out hot. It wouldn't shock me if he came out headhunting. And I'm not saying he can't win that way, because he can. And he is certainly the more heavy-handed of the two. But I just think that is not the path of least resistance that he could be taking, because as good of a grappler as Magny is in his own right, I still think the route to take for Gilbert Burns here is to go to the grappling. And we've seen Neil Magny hit walls in the grappling against the highest level of grappler. And that's exactly what Gilbert Burns is. So for Gilbert to go in there and play with a 9-inch reach is just not the game that I want to see him playing. if he does, I think this fight becomes kind of more coin-tossy than it has to be. I'd like to think Gilbert's power could still swing it, but I could see the jab being an issue for him. Just like straight punches. Sometimes Gilbert gets kind of stuck on the end of jabs. But I'll say he comes in and fights smart. I think he does kind of feel that he just needs to make sure he gets a win and stays in the mix here. So I think he'll come in and grapple. I could see him even finish Magny down there. I think Umar actually just picked a sub, so obviously you think that too. I could see it as a sub. I could even see it as him like trapping Neal and raining shots down on him. I'm torn on if I want to say a finish, but I'll say it is a decision win for Gilbert Burns.
Hey, rattle off the odds real quick again.
Gilbert minus 475, Magny plus 350.
Man, oh man.
Yeah.
Tempting odds, in my opinion, because I feel like it's closer than that.
I agree. I didn't think it'd be that wide.
375 for Magny is
minus 400 for Burns.
Pretty good fucking. It's pretty good value though.
Yeah, you have 4.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm not a betting man, but I've heard words like sprinkle. Would that be appropriate?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Listen, this is a tough fucking fight for me to pick, man. Don't fucking sleep on Neil Magny.
Never.
Spoiler alert. I think I'm gonna go with Gilbert Burns. I loved your whole assessment, Mark. I think he would be smart to lead on his strength here. Neil Magny is no slouch anywhere. And I hate to be a copycat. I'm going to copy your pick, Mark. I think Gilbert Burns, in a 3-round fight, he is going to win enough exchanges, enough scrambles, and enough moments on the ground to get a unanimous decision victory. Poor Magny, man. Poor Magny, this fucking guy. Isn't he like the winningest fighter in UFC history?
Yeah, right, isn't he? Or in welterweight history, I think it is.
Welterweight
yeah,
history.
welterweight, I'm pretty sure. I mean, this is his one, dude. Like, this is the breakthrough if Neil Magny could win this fight.
Yes, well said.
So, big opportunity for him here, for sure.
All right, boys. Let's go on to the co-main event of
You can't
UFC
really call
283.
him. You can't really call him a gatekeeper if he wins this fight anymore, right?
Yeah,
absolutely. Yes.
Kind of walked away from the gate at that point.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
He went through the gate, is what he did.
Into the kingdom.
Walked right
Absolutely.
through.
Yeah.
Okay, co-main event time, boys. And a fight that I had to admit I think could have been the main event of this card.
Yeah, I think it should have been, personally. I think they should be flip-flopped.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Deiveson Figueiredo versus Brandon Moreno. It is Figueiredo Moreno 4. These two have fought 3 times before. And for Figueiredo, Moreno is all 3 of his last 3 opponents. The last time Figueiredo fought somebody not named Brandon Moreno was in 2020 when he fought Alex Perez. Okay, so Figueiredo, the current champ, 35-year-old, out of Para Brazil. He's 21-2 with 1 draw, 9 knockouts, 8 submissions, coming off of that win in that 3rd match against Moreno, in which he won by a unanimous decision. Moreno, the much beloved 29-year-old out of Tijuana, Baja California, Mexico. He's 20-6 with 2 draws, 4 knockouts, 11 subs. He's coming off a win against Kai Kara France, which he finished him with a nasty body kick, followed up by punches in the 3rd round back in July. So the first 3 fights of these guys. The first one was a draw. The second one, Moreno finished Figueiredo. And in the 3rd one, Figueiredo won by UD. Figueiredo, interestingly, who is much more, you would say, is the juggernaut of the two, has never finished Moreno, but Moreno schooled him in that second fight, finishing him in the 5th round. That's one of my favorite fights ever.
Yeah.
Mark, start us off. Give us your take and your pick of this amazing co-main.
All right, I might talk for a minute here, and I would guess Omar is going to as well. The slight favorite is the challenger, Brandon Moreno, minus 120. Deiveson Figueiredo is plus 100, even money. We are flipping a coin here. The odds agree. We know this already. We've seen these guys do this 3 times before. Of course, I could see this fight going either way. But I can't get myself to go any other way than with Brandon Moreno. And really, there's plenty of reasons to go the other way. The coaching is such a factor. Figgy, I thought, looked really good after training with Cejudo in his next fight. I would imagine he's only even more improved now with more time over at Fight Ready. Moreno, as we know, has lost his coach in James Krause, had to join a new team, adjust on the fly. That's not super ideal. Figgy's getting a hometown fight in Brazil, crowd behind him. He may get a huge surge from that. Plus, the hometown judging in Brazil is always a thought if we get another very close fight. So there are plenty of reasons to talk yourself into picking Deiveson Figueiredo here. And obviously, he won the most recent fight between these two guys. But to me, Brandon Moreno has won more of this trilogy than he has lost. As Mike said, he's the only man with a finish. So despite the trilogy being 1-1-1, Moreno's actually ahead in my book because of the fact that he has a finish in this trilogy. And I truly feel as though he has been the better fighter for more minutes of these fights. Like, Figgy has needed some big moments and some big shots that change the fight and that steal the round. And, of course, he can get those again. But I just can't pick against the guy that I feel like has been the better fighter over more time in more moments and is less reliant on needing something big to win rounds. So I'm going to go Moreno here. Plus, it's been a year off for Figgy, and he is the older fighter. He is the one with the harder weight cut, which we're already hearing rumblings about.
Have you seen the picture?
So, no, I didn't see the pictures. Rough?
I'll send it to you. I don't know what he's cutting. What else is there? There's 2 days left. Well, I guess.
And he looks
It's
gutted
still
already.
2 days. He looks like he should have already weighed in.
Oh, boy. So, yeah, I will go with Brandon Moreno. I will say Brandon Moreno, unanimous decision, champ once again.
Wow. Omar, when you get done sending us this scary image, give us your take and weigh in.
You guys know that there's no way in hell I pick against Moreno. It just doesn't happen. It's not going to happen. That's my man's right there. He's one of the bigger nerds in the UFC roster.
God.
Yeah.
What is he cutting?
They are currently, for those of you listening, they are currently just getting the video of...
Oh, wait. How many pounds are left on him right now?
Yeah,
I have no idea. I have no idea.
How is he alive?
You can check the caption. I don't know.
Bro, he looks awful.
But here's what I know.
Can I put this in the camera? Yeah.
A full
his
2
veins.
days.
You can't
his
really
veins
tell,
are
actually,
already
'cause of the
coming
glare.
out.
It looks like he's just ripped, but if you could see the actual veins, it's bad.
Yeah, his veins are visible
You can
at
see the
this
veins in
point.
his chest.
There's nothing left. There's nothing left to cut. I don't understand what else there is.
This might not happen. You can see all the.
That's
veins in
what
his
everybody's
arms.
saying. That's what everybody's saying is that they're not gonna. He's not gonna make it to the fight. That's.
I mean, this reminds me of
the
last time I saw a
speculation.
guy like.
I
this
mean,
was-
it might be that they still fight, but that he's stripped and only
he can't
Moreno
get
can
the
win the
belt.
belt.
Yep, that can happen too.
Sorry,
Figueiredo's
Mike, I think I
the
talked
worst,
for you.
No, it's all good.
Sorry.
Keep going, Omar. Give us your.
Fuck, he looks horrible. Oh my
Yeah,
god.
it's not great. It's not great. Had he looked like that on weigh-in day, we could get through it. I guess that'd be one thing. But it's fucking this. He looked like this Wednesday afternoon. I don't know what's happening. Anyway, skill for skill, I love Brandon Moreno. I think he's a little bit more well-rounded. The biggest difference, though, that you're always going to find between these two is Figueiredo carries the power advantage by far. You know, when Figueiredo lands a punch, usually Brandon Moreno is found himself with his ass on the ground, needing to struggle to get back up. Brandon Moreno, though, however, is very skilled and very technical, very good with the volume, very good with the weight. I mean, he lands power as well. It's just the differential is very, very far apart from one another. The reactions are not the same. The impacts are not the same. But Moreno does work, and Moreno has shown that he can damage Figueiredo and put him into terrible positions. I think really where we're at with this quadrilogy.
Yep.
Sure.
All right.
That's the right word. Quadrilogy.
Oh, it is really.
Yep.
All right. So where I think we're at right now with this is we've seen Figueiredo not be at his best according to him, right? And that was the fight that Moreno took over. We've seen them kind of clash to the point where it was a draw, very difficult decision to come out of. And then we've seen another third fight out of them where, in my opinion, Brandon Moreno won that fight.
Oh, really? Wow.
I think Brandon Moreno won that fight.
I don't remember what I thought, to be perfectly honest. I think I thought Moreno won as well.
But we continue to live in a world where it's still very disputed in the undisputed championship world, right? Like, we still are not 100% sure, because as far as I'm concerned, Moreno was the only one who put a stamp on his performance when it came to winning that fight. So we go to a fourth one. We're probably going to need a fifth one by the time this series is all said and done. But your boy's going with Brandon Moreno. I'm going to go by decision.
You guys know I love Brandon Moreno.
Don't do it.
But I'm going Figgy.
You're the worst.
Here's why. I mean, look, seeing this image of him makes me want to change my tune, but this is what my pick was coming into the show, so I'm going to stay with it for now.
Mark, I think you took the knife out of your back and stuck it in mine.
I did think Figgy won the last fight. I have all my notes in Excel, so I was able to scroll back to that event.
Oh, wow. I feel like the power that Figueiredo carries, Moreno has to have a perfect night to beat Figueiredo, like he did in the second fight. Like, the planets have to align for Moreno more so than for Figueiredo. Figueiredo just has the kinds of tools and weapons where he can have not the best night and still catch Moreno and either finish him potentially, even though he hasn't done that yet. But of course he still could. He could finish anybody at 125 pounds. Or just, land the more damaging shots and walk away the victor. And I think that Moreno... I'm just going to circle back and say the same thing. I think Moreno kind of has to have the perfect night in order to win. Could he? Of course he could. He already has. So for that reason, I'm going with Figueiredo to win this one. I will say he's going to win it again by UD.
Moreno has never been stopped in his professional career. Deiveson Figueiredo will not be that man. Fuck that.
Okay. All right, main event time, and then it's bedtime.
Yeah, seriously.
Main event.
Wait. By the way, Brandon Moreno has been stopped. Are you including submission? Are you saying
in his professional career?
Well, Pantoja tapped him on tough. I don't know if you want to count it.
Tough be exhibitions, dog.
Tough doesn't count. That's right.
Tough don't count.
Not on his official record. But it counts for something.
Yes. Well, yeah, he still got his ass choked out by Pantoja. The memory is always going to be there.
Yeah.
Yes.
But the L is not on his permanent pro record.
Fair.
Okay, main event time. Let's get into this very interesting fight. Light heavyweight title fight. Teixeira versus Hill. Glover Teixeira, the 43-year-old out of Brazil. His record stands at 33-8 with 18 knockouts and 10 subs on his record. He's coming off of a loss, an epic, a classic against Yuri Prochazka back in June of 2022. A fight that he ultimately lost in the last moments of the fifth round. It was an amazing fight back and forth. Of course, Glover made history taking the belt off of Jan Blachowicz back in October of 21. Man, there's so much to say about Glover Teixeira, man. What a career this guy's had. Win or lose or draw this Saturday night, what a career. standing across from him at the octagon, in the octagon, a guy who is going to try to answer the opportunity that is in front of him, Jamal Sweet Dreams Hill, out of Grand Rapids, Michigan, my backyard here. His record is quite different from Teixeira's. His record stands at 11-1-1. That is 11 wins, 1 loss, and 1 no contest. Of his 11 victories, 7 have come by way of knockout, and he is riding a fantastic 3-fight win streak coming into this title fight, finishing all 3 opponents, Jimmy Crute, Johnny Walker, and Thiago Santos. Okay. Omar, let's start with you this time. Give us your assessments and ultimately your pick of this very interesting title fight.
I'm a huge Jamahal Hill fan. I'm a huge fan of his fighting. I love what he brings to the octagon. This is one of those guys when I was talking about, guys like Sean Strickland who don't necessarily present that finishing power, that finishing instinct, the ability, whatever you want to call it. Jamahal Hill does not have that problem. Jamahal Hill goes in there and fucking zips things right up, buttons everything up, dots every I, crosses every T, knocks out every person. He's had one decision in the UFC, which was early on in his, right after his Contender Series finish on the Contender Series finish. Mm-hmm. Then he came into the UFC, had his debutante moment where we see a lot of guys with a lot of promise come in with the decision, something a little bit more lackluster than we're used to. Lights and nerves get to them and things like that. We saw it with Tatsuro Taira during his UFC debut, and then his next fight fucking demolished this kid. So I think we see the same thing with Jamahal Hill. I think he's had a fantastic run so far. I think his momentum is fantastic. The Paul Craig one, he got caught. He was working Paul Craig and he got caught, and it like ripped his arm out and ended up getting beat on until the referee pulled him apart. But Jamahal Hill is a real problem, man. He's a real problem. He's young, he's powerful, he's skilled, and he is not afraid to get into a fight. Glover is, I think, at a point now. Glover has never looked like somebody who enjoys getting hit. He's a man who is constantly trying to work from within a shell, for better or worse. And I think the thing that messes him up when he gets into these firefights is he doesn't have a safe way of getting out of them. His reaction and his intent seems to be, I'm going to turtle up, defend as best as I can, and try to land a counter somewhere in this barrage. We've seen Glover take a lot of damage in situations like that. I think Jamahal Hill is too much of a sniper for that to last. I think Jamahal Hill sleeps Glover round 1 KO.
Wow. I think Jamahal Hill does what Yuri couldn't do.
I do. And I think for one reason. Yuri is a wild motherfucker. Yuri is like a more controlled version of Johnny Walker. But sure. Yeah. The man is still button mashing half the time. You could see him just, he flows, which I give him credit for. That when I say he flows, it's, his movements don't seem very rigid. He, like, wherever he ends up, he's going to attack from there. He's not going to reset, go back to a fighting position. Like, if he overthrew his elbow, well, fuck, I'm going to throw a back elbow then because I'm still moving.
He's a little bit of like a drunken master style.
Yes, he is very creative in there, for sure. And I think that's what makes him the most difficult is his flowy ability. I think Jamahal Hill, though, is just more accurate, more precise, more intent on what he's trying to do as opposed to a Yuri who kind of goes with the flow, if you will. And like I said, I think Jamahal Hill's he sees the bullseye. He sees the target. Yep. I don't trust Glover's defense enough with somebody like that to survive for much longer because Jamahal Hill is a fast starter and we've seen him sustain for rounds. Not 5, I don't think. But we have seen him sustain for a few rounds. So, 4 and change. Or I guess 3 and change, technically. So, I'm going to go with Jamahal Hill. Like I said, KO, round 1.
Okay, Mark, you're up.
So, I guess after hearing that breakdown, I should not be as surprised as I am. but I was very surprised to see Jamahal Hill as the betting favorite in this fight.
Hey.
He is minus 135. Glover is plus 110.
So somewhat close.
Oh, yeah, very close. Definitely very close. I just did not ever think I'd see Hill on the minus side of things, but here he is. So I don't know how it started. I'm curious if it started the other way and bettors, made it move this way, or if they had always said it with Hill as the favorite. But, yeah, I'm surprised to see that. And I guess I do get it, even before listening to what Umar just said, because Glover Teixeira does get hit, and Jamahal Hill does throw fucking kill shots with accuracy. So I get it. And Hill's going to be the bigger guy by a bit. He's got 2 inches of height. He's got a 3-inch reach advantage on Glover. I'm sure that helps. He has absolutely been making significant improvements to his game. And, yeah, as I said, the accuracy is a big component for Jamahal Hill because Glover has kind of made a living off of eating some shots and being able to survive and adjusting, especially early in fights. And if he's getting hit with Hill's power, clean, accurate round one, I could see it go south. But, God, I just don't see how Glover Teixeira doesn't take him down and put him in trouble. Like, we saw Thiago Santos take Jamahal Hill down 6 times. And Glover Teixeira ain't Thiago Santos. Not even close. And I know Jamahal Hill has been training with Anthony Smith now and working on the grappling, and Smith is trying to give him some tips. But as Glover showed us very convincingly, he ain't Anthony Smith either. He made light work of Anthony Smith. He destroyed him in ways that were uncomfortable on the ground.
He apologized. He apologized to him for how bad he was kicking his ass.
Yes. So this man is a whole other level of grappler. And I personally just think the advantage is too big. Like, Hill is a southpaw. I could see Glover just being able to grab that lead leg for the single leg all day. And like I said, maybe Glover has to endure some things in round one. I would say if I was on the Glover side of things as a fan, really I'm split as a fan in this fight, or betting wise, yeah, I'd be nervous in round one. I could see Glover having to endure a bit and maybe tough it out before he can truly get to work. But he has shown us that he has a chin. Like, let's be honest, he's proven this time and time again, no matter how old he's gotten, that he can still take these shots. And on top of that, Glover can box too. He's got hands for days. Maybe not as dangerous as Hill as a knockout artist, but enough to hang, in my opinion. So a big spotlight in Brazil for Glover, and I think he ends up basking in it and wins back this title. I just think by late round one, or at least into round two, this thing starts hitting the mat, and it doesn't really stop. And eventually we're headed home with Glover taking the belt. I will say round 3 submission win for Glover Teixeira.
Glover should retire if he wins this fight. I mean, how beautiful would that be?
That would be dope.
Yeah, that would be. Would never get the rematch with Yuri, but...
Oh, and I wanted to say, think about the fact that Glover Teixeira is training with Alex Pereira every day, and you're not getting better striking looks than that. So I think that helps as well.
Yeah.
All good points. I am torn for this one. I feel like Jamahal Hill is a budding star on the roster. He clearly is a guy with a big personality. He doesn't mind being in front of a camera. He doesn't mind trying to be humorous or charismatic. In fact, he really seems to lean into it, which is really nice. I really like him as a new personality in the sport. And I'm kind of rooting for him to win, to kind of have that passing of the guard moment, because let's face it, Glover, if not this fight, at some point very soon, he's going to be or should be stepping away from the sport. And I want Jamahal Hill to kind of have his moment of ascendancy in terms of like true elite status. Having that 205 belt wrapped around his waist would really just catapult him even more so. The tough part, as Mark alluded to, if Thiago Santos took him down that many times, and if Paul Craig caught him in a slick submission. Now, while Paul Craig is a much more, I'll say, like a athletic jiu-jitsu player, Glover is just, you do not want that guy on top of you ever. He's not the guy who's going to throw up athletic triangle chokes or arm bars, but his knowledge of jiu-jitsu, his mechanical knowledge is just too much. And Jamahal Hill, he only has 13 fights on his whole record. It really gives me a lot of pause. I'm going to go against my better judgment here. I'm going to take Jamahal Hill.
Wow.
I don't know why. I shouldn't.
So you sound so disappointed in yourself.
It's more of a feel pick. I just feel like it's his moment. I am worried that Glover is going to be like, there's no Santa Claus kind of a performance. But I'm banking on, I guess, the mileage, the beating that Glover took from Vieira in that fight, and his age, hoping that he slows down a bit. Not hoping. I love the guy. He's fucking amazing. And that Jamahal Hill, I think he also is going to be bringing a lot of confidence and self-belief into this fight. And I'm going to say it's going to be his moment. I think he's going to win by knockout. I'll say round 1 with Umar. Fuck.
Wow. Yeah, if it comes, I think it comes early. I do think that.
He knows how
to fight. He knows how to fight, man.
I see Glover like against the cage, like doing his Glover thing, and just gets right through, pops him on the chin, and just Glover's legs just give out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that wouldn't shock me. I could see it.
Yep. Well, boys, we've done it again.
Boom.
Let's end with a little bit of trivia.
That was a good app. I like that app.
Okay. In the UFC, Francis Ngannou is tied for 4th all time with BJ Penn and Gabriel Gonzaga for highest finishes per win percentage with a minimum of 10 UFC wins.
What?
Okay.
He's tied for 4th for the highest percentage of finishes amongst his wins.
Finishes per win percentage.
Yeah.
Okay. So Francis had, out of 12 wins, 11 of them were finishes.
Oh, I get what you're saying. Okay. Yep.
Knockout, finish rate out of his wins.
I'm there with you.
Right.
Of UFC fighters with at least 10, that's part of the criteria here, at least 10 UFC wins, who has the highest finish rate? Is it A, Gerald Meerschaert?
Oh, we're getting choices.
Is it B, Vitor Belfort? Is it C, Vicente Luque? Or is it D, Charles Oliveira?
Wow. Fuck, these are hard.
Who's
A again? Why did I forget A already? Oh, Meerschaert.
Meerschaert.
Because it's not A.
So Meerschaert, Luque, Oliveira,
Belfort.
and Belfort.
Honestly, my initial inclination was Oliveira when the question was even brought up. And then the Luque name was like, it could be Luque.
So it's not most finishes. It is rate of finish once you have hit 10 fights or 10 wins.
With at least 10 wins.
At least 10 wins.
Highest finish rate.
Okay.
That's what it should be called, finish rate, right?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Luque hasn't had a decision or has had one decision in his fucking career. I just don't know how long he's been in the UFC now.
Yeah, man. Fuck. Belfort used to finish everybody, though. God.
This is good.
Yeah,
This is good.
but not. Oh, but
I like this
always?
indecision. It's a good question.
Yeah, the percentage part really fucks you because, especially for somebody like Belfort, who's around for like 100 years.
Plus, it's probably so close. One probably is 9 out of 10. The other's 8 out of 10. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
It is close.
yeah, or it's like 9 out of 11 versus 9 out of 10 or some shit. And so
I'm thinking about all the times that Vitor Belfort lost as if that actually matters, and that's what I think is confusing me because even though he didn't always win, the wins that Vitor Belfort did have, he was usually finishing somebody.
I can't even think of Charles winning a fight by decision.
Me either, right? Like they were all submissions, either submission
it
or
has
some
to have
kind
happened. I can't really think of any of these guys winning a fight by decision. Meerschaert, yeah. I feel like it's not Meerschaert.
Watch it be Meerschaert because that's like the one.
Fucking be Meerschaert.
It's the one we fucking are not picking it out now.
Oh man, it's all three of them tie.
I'll go from the bottom.
I will say
Oh,
no. We
you
got to
gotta
make a
pick
guess. We got to make a guess. I will say it is Vitor Belfort.
Omar.
I'm going to do Charles Oliveira because that was my initial inclination. I thought I was going to leave it to Mark. I didn't know if Mark wanted to take his boy. But if he ain't going to take him, I'm taking him.
Okay. Charles Oliveira is in 8th place.
Jesus.
19 of his 21 wins in the UFC have come by way of finish.
And he's in fucking 8th place?
Yes.
This is absurd.
Remember, I pointed out
shit.
Ngannou was tied for 4th with BJ and Gabriel Gonzaga. All 3 of those guys finished 11 of their 12 wins.
Wow.
Vicente Luque finished 13 of his 14 wins. That's a 92.86 percentage.
I think that decision
So he's
was
in
like
third?
his last fight.
Correct. Vicente is alone in 3rd. Alone in 2nd place.
So who was in 7th?
Oh, I didn't include him. It's Anthony
my
Smith.
my choice was just the fuck up. I fucked up. I chose number 8.
It better not be Mearshart. Let me be right.
In 2nd place is Vitor Belfort. Finishing 14
fuck
of his
outta
15
here.
wins. And in 1st place, get this, is Gerald Mearshart, finishing 10 of his 10 UFC wins.
Unbelievable.
Wow. He just made the cut with 10 fights, the bastard.
That's
Wow.
true. That's true.
How many losses does he have?
That's a good
7.
question.
7.
You're looking.
In the UFC?
Yeah.
This is in the
7.
UFC.
7.
He has 7 losses in the UFC?
Yeah, he's 10-7 in the UFC.
Holy shit.
I pulled up my rankings just once Mike told us the answers.
So he's
No,
either
it's not like
finishing
I
somebody
could've
or getting
finished it
beat
here
on.
Anyway.
Yep.
Wow.
Now, he has a huge. He has 50 fights. So I'm sure looking further down.
What?
Yeah, he has wins by decision, but before the UFC.
He has 50 fights or 49?
No, he's got 50 fights.
Am I missing
How
a
the
fight?
fuck?
How old
How long
is
has
this
this
guy?
fucking guy been fighting? Holy shit, he's been fighting since
my age.
2007?
He's our age.
Oh, I'm
He's
missing a fight.
35.
Bro, he's been fighting since he was like 19.
Yeah, dude. Professional.
Yeah.
That's crazy. What a psycho.
Wow.
Been in the UFC since
He's from
2016.
Wisconsin.
Bro, and he's been subbing people left and right his whole life.
He's good, man.
Yeah, I mean, he
He's
ain't
real
knocking
good.
him out.
He's not knocking him out.
Jesus.
Yeah, he's a submission threat. All right, boys.
Wow, that was a great question.
Thank
Yeah,
you. Thank
well
you.
done.
Gerald Mearshart, Jesus.
I thought that was the red herring, and it ended up being Charles Oliveira. Fucking Christ. I got
All right.
bamboozled. I got
was-
bamboozled.
That was close. The answer was Vitor Belfort until whenever fucking Mearshart won his most recent fight.
All right. That's it.
Folks, enjoy the fights this weekend. Pay-per-view, UFC 283. We will reconvene next week with our recap of the fights from this pay-per-view. And we're going to keep on rolling, folks. You guys have a great weekend. We'll talk soon.
War Shogun. Peace.
Peace.